Evening, everybody, and welcome to the South Burlington City Council meeting for November 18th, 2024. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'm going to call on Andrew to lead. Did you start last time? Last week? Okay. Mr. Scanlon. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 2, instructions on exiting the building in case of emergency and review of technology options. Jesse Baker, City Manager.
Thank you. So for those in the room, thank you for joining us in person. If there's an emergency in the building, you can go out either side of the rear of the auditorium and then turn left or right to get outside. For those who are joining us remotely, thanks for joining us as well. If you would like to talk during any item on the agenda, you can turn your camera on and the chair will call on you, or you can indicate your interest in speaking in the chat and I will have the chair call on you. Other than that, we are not monitoring the chat for content.
Thank you. Also, item 3, which is agenda review. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes in order of agenda items? Did I see that there was a request to remove a consent agenda item, or should we wait for that item?
No, we would like to take off 6D from the consent agenda in total. It's the grant application that we no longer intend to apply for.
Okay. Are there any other additions or deletions from council? Okay, then. Next, we will move on to item 4, which is comments and questions from the public not related to the agenda tonight. Is there anybody in the auditorium or online who would like to speak about something that's not on our agenda tonight? I'll take that as a no. Okay. Now we'll move on to councilors' announcements and reports on committee assignments and city manager's report. Who would like to start tonight? Shall we go starting with Elizabeth?
I'll start very brief.
Okay.
I attended the SBBA annual meeting this week and had an opportunity to listen to Mike Pichek speak. And that was the extent of my activities since our last meeting.
Thank you. Andrew?
So I attended an Economic Development Committee meeting. They discussed the work plan, which we'll be seeing later tonight, so I won't talk about that more. And we heard from the CEO of Hula and Lucia Campiello, as well as Mike Biama, Vice President at REARC, about what's going on at Hula, what's going on at Tech Park. A lot of exciting stuff going on there, so pretty interesting. Had a couple of meetings to discuss the pilot safe route to school route that we established. We reviewed the survey results. It was largely positive. The Safe Route to School Task Force is going to be putting together a presentation on that. I anticipate the council will hear more about that in the near future. I attended a conversation with a counselor session. About 6-7 folks there maybe. Folks talked about, the budget, taxes. We talked about the Sextons. We talked about how we make our shared use path safer for pedestrians. Noted that a lot of bicyclists maybe ride too fast, maybe e-bikes ride too fast. There was a gentleman there who talked about F-35s and questioning whether it would be possible to think about putting housing in the area from which the 200 homes were removed. Then I attended the night of the SBPA meeting. VPERG had their annual meeting. Mike Piechek was also there, so he's quite a prolific speaker. He also spoke really well about what the state plans are for the next year. And VPERG celebrated the successes of last year, which were, Vermont phasing out PFAS, Vermont phasing out neonicotinoids, our 100% renewable energy legislation by 2035, and the Polluter Pays Act. So, yeah.
Thank you, Andrew. Mike?
Thank you. I think, like all of us here, worked the election on the 5th of November. Again, something that I think all of us are very proud to be able to participate in. On the 7th of November, I attended the Champlain Housing Trust fundraiser, which I was really impressive of hearing the story. It really brought, I was not aware that they were behind the Bay Ridge initiative, which is just about 4 blocks up from our border with Shelburne. but 94 affordable homes, 68 rental, 26 for sale, a walking distance of stores and restaurants, right across from a GM, bus stops going both ways, including that if we have the reimagined route that would bring people into be able to enjoy our community and the benefits. But it also just underscored, the real focus for housing as an imperative. Also heard that at the SBA event that also attended, where Mike Pichak really, I think that was the essence and focus of his discussion, the real demand for a need for housing. Also attended two GMT board meetings. One was board meeting, one was finance. There they took the decision that to proceed with the traditional assessment process of 4%, but also to levy a special assessment of $308,000 for municipalities if that is needed, and that would be primarily focused on buyouts if there are the cuts that require a downsizing, and also the beginning of a process of transferring how assessments for ADA are handled. They've been traditionally 50% paid by ADA rights for each municipality, 50% paid by the municipality, 50% by GMT, but the move is to shift more of that responsibility to the municipalities, so that that breakup would go 45% GMT, 55% municipality. They've also submitted, we approved the legislation, the interim legislation report, or a report to the legislatures, which will lay out the case for additional state funding, which will then lead to the decisions that will come in January and March about where GMT goes. Will there be another round of cuts, and the partnership with the municipalities and other users. On the 13th of November, attended the Bike and Ped Committee. As Andrew said, like Andrew said with the economic, they'll be presenting here, so I won't go into detail. They'll speak to it. But one of the things I thought was really impressive was they spoke about 3 outreach efforts in coordination with the park. It really just emphasizes how, Park and Rec Department, how if we all cooperate, we can just get so much done. There's also talk about perhaps doing something in the future with SB3C, the organization about City Center, especially if we start getting in the habit of creating events where we might close down the City Center street periodically to do something. And then, like everyone else here, on 15 November, pay the property tax.
Thank you, Mike. But you did pay it?
Yeah, I checked. It's gone.
That's good. Okay, that's good.
The chunk is gone.
That's good. Ooh. Lori?
Well, I'll start. I just came from a Parks and Rec meeting, and they were talking about trying to get their work plan to us. Held their feet to the fire a little bit to make it happen. They weren't able to meet last month because of lack of quorum. They will have their work plan to us for review at our second meeting in December. And I just also wanted to sort of send a shout out to Adam and the work that Parks and Rec have been doing. And I didn't know this, but in the last year, he has built the annual events for Parks and Rec from 34 events a year to 106 events a year. And not only that, but he has raised the sponsorship to pay for them. So these events are happening largely by sponsorship and contribution, not from our tax dollars. And the list of what he's got, what's already happened this year and what he's got set up for next year is phenomenal. So just a shout out to that. I also was at the election and voted and was amazed by the level of turnout we had for the vote this year. Went to the SBBA fall meeting and had an interesting conversation with Connor Timmons, who is director of Home Share Vermont, and conversation about how Home Share can help with the housing crisis. Just looking at all the different pieces that can come together with that. And had a interesting conversation with Carol McQuillan, and Common Roots are expecting to close on the purchase of the property at South Village before Thanksgiving. So they are moving ahead, which is remarkable. Went to the CHT luncheon and am always impressed with the work that they are doing. Have scheduled now for January 30th showing in the auditorium here of The Quietest Year, a film about noise pollution. So that is on the books and will be advertised, and will probably be followed up with a series of at least 2 additional films that will be sponsored between myself and the Energy Committee. So that's happening. I joined the Run on Climate Local Climate Policy Network meeting last Friday, which was counselors from several cities in Massachusetts, Connecticut, Colorado, talking about, a lot of the conversation was about the importance for climate action at the local level, given the change that's taken place nationally, and what that will mean for climate funding, for climate action, and for the health of our communities as the climate crisis unfolds. So that was a very interesting conversation. And the city council, the conversation with the councilor, the one thing that Andrew mentioned briefly, but I just wanted to highlight, was the person who was talking about the Bike Ped Committee expressed a concern that the committee is focused more on bike network and bike transportation than pedestrian safety, and was very concerned about crosswalks and really making sure that that committee focuses on pedestrian safety as well. And the other thing I wanted to mention was the folks that attended. We were at the library this time for the first time, and many of the folks that were there have been to our other venues, and they really liked being at City Hall. There was really positive feedback for that. And it speaks to our amazing library. And I think that covers it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. I also worked the election on November 5th. I was at Tuttle and in District 12 or 11, and it was really great to be there because I got to see a lot of old neighbors, because I used to live in the Eastwoods neighborhood, and so that district's great, and I was able to catch up on what's going on in that part of town. I really appreciated being there. I attended the opening for the show that you see in the hallways behind you. That was sponsored by the Public Arts Committee, to which I'm a liaison, and those are all works by Juliana Brazil, and she has a cartoon weekly in the 7 Days magazine that you can pick up for free or look at online. So some of them are really enjoyable. They're beautiful, and some of they're very humorous as well, the ones that have cats in them. I also attended the SBBA fall meeting on Logic and listened to Mike Pisak speak. My wife and I also attended a play called The Taste of Freedom at St. Mike's a couple of Fridays ago. This is a play written by a St. Mike's senior who has muscular dystrophy. And so she put together a plot line that called on some classic figures from mythology to explain her perspective on her own disabilities and her abilities. And it was really well done. And I was really glad that we went to see that, because it was a really long piece of dialogue for 4 actors, and it was written by a student. So I was appreciative of that. I also went to a planning commission meeting, and they're working on their form-based codes. And it's the fire department here. They're talking about 14-story buildings being possible in the densest part of that form-based code area. And I was wondering how far our ladders could get up, but I guess that's not an issue. No, not an issue. Good, I also was just in time to get to the last hour or so of the Energy Committee's book discussion about Road to Nowhere, and they actually had patched in Paris Marks, the author, over Zoom or GoToMeeting. And I got to tell you, this guy knows he really knows his stuff. He was so articulate on so many issues regarding EVs and the auto industry and where things are headed. It was a real pleasure to hear him speak with what I would consider just remarkable authority for somebody his age. It's just his amount of research is just incredible. And you know, I didn't read the book before I got there, but I didn't think that was necessary. I wanted to hear what he had to say. I also was in Boston this weekend and got a chance to go to Lars Anderson Park in Brookline, and I was so excited because I saw 2 ChargePoint charging stations. I wanted to hook my car up, and I walked over and it said, "Coming soon" from DPW. So I just missed it by a few days. That's okay. I unfortunately missed the community dinner at Tuttle that featured, I think, the cooking of my neighbor into my rear yard, Alganesh Michael, right, where she was cooking Abyssinian and Ethiopian food. So I wish I had been able to go there, but I couldn't go. So that's all I have. I will turn it over to the city manager.
Thank you. We just have a couple of updates this week. As I said at our last meeting, November is proving to be very, very busy for us. So we have completed our day-long interviews of finance softwares to modernize our finance system and have a preferred vendor that we have started contract negotiations with. Our plan is to bring that contract to you all for approval the second meeting in December. We also, starting tomorrow, will be training our staff on using our new website that will be launched in January. We also had interviews last week for our economic development strategic plan consultants and have, as a team, selected a consultant to start negotiating with and have a backup if we need to. We also hope to bring that to you at the second meeting in December. And of course, we are finalizing our budget scenarios for you for December 2nd. You will receive, and the community will receive, all of that budget information a week from tomorrow, the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. It's still only gives you a week within. It's a lot of information, but you will have 6 to 7 weeks to hear presentations on it and have discussion about it, but it will be posted on Tuesday. We are also recruiting for a new HR director. So if folks know of anyone in the community who would be a great new HR director for the city, please feel free to send them our way. Also wanted to share with the council that Tim and I are working on setting up a meeting with our newly elected state delegation as just kind of a briefing before the session starts, and we're excited about that. And then finally, just as a reminder to the committee, the Longview project will be going to the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board on December 13th. They have proposed some conditions for that potential grant funding. The property owner and South Burlington Land Trust have responded to those conditions. Your conditions or your contingencies are the same as they were as approved in September. And when the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board makes a decision, it will come back to you for additional comment or direction. And that's what I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Jesse. I just also want to acknowledge the fact that we had another tragic bicycle fatality on Shelburne Road in the middle of the night. I think the state police are still investigating that, and we don't have any results on that. As you may have seen on WCAX, Local Motion has proposed a task force to be formed to look at and analyze and see how that road can be made safer. So I think we would want to wait for the state police to make some finding and find out what happened there. So, but just want to acknowledge the fact that that's another tragic thing that's happened on that road. So, all right, thank you. Moving to item 6, which is the consent agenda. We've removed D, but I'll read the rest. Consider and sign disbursements. Receive the FY26 budget survey results. Approve the corrected assessed values of 418 O'Brien Farm Road and 438 O'Brien Farm Road. Authorize the city manager to sign 2 memorandums of understanding with the South Burlington Firefighters Association, one which changes the way in which overtime is assigned, and the other that increases the number of lieutenants and expands the eligibility for promotion. And finally, receive the FY25 first quarter budget narratives. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
So, second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right.
I was just going to say, I did have an opportunity to meet with Steve Locke today on the two MOUs, and he answered a lot of questions I had, and I was very satisfied with the rationale and the approach moving forward. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Elizabeth. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
None opposed. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 7, which is receive the Town Meeting TV fiscal year 24 report and request for FY26 municipal support. We have Jordan Mitchell, the code director. Excuse me? We have, okay.
That's not, I didn't put it on.
We have Megan O'Rourke and
Jordan.
Jordan, okay. Can you introduce yourselves? That would be great, thank you.
Can you make,
I can do that. Hi, welcome. My name is Megan O'Rourke, and I am one of the co-directors of CCTV. And I have the pleasure of working with Jordan Mitchell, who will introduce herself and
I'm Jordan Mitchell, co-director of operations for Town Meeting TV. And so we're here to present what is our fiscal year 25, your fiscal year 26 kind of budget and give an overview of the last fiscal year. We then will pause, and then we have a second item, which we'll get there when we get there. I don't want to confuse the two. And so Town Meeting TV, we submit a report on packet page 81, I think. I don't know if I double-checked that. Somewhere deep in your packet is our report to the City Council to talk about our operations, to hear from the community on how we might better serve the community's needs, and request an annual municipal contribution for general Town Meeting TV operating costs. And this is something we've done annually the last couple of years. So first, I want to review the programming that we did last year. So last year, Town Meeting TV, we produced 1,519 programs for all of our communities, and 377 of these was municipal meetings, municipal coverage. For South Burlington, we can cover 5 meetings a month and at least one general program, non-municipal related program a month. And last fiscal year, we produced 57 City Council and Development Review Board meetings. Those are the 2 meetings we regularly cover for this municipality. And then some other general non-municipal programming was we covered the closing of Palace 9. Some of our media interns covered that. The solar eclipse that happened in April. 2 of the Juneteenth programs. One of the Hair Equity Project panel, and then the celebration that happens in Memorial Park. So we covered some other programming. With the municipal programming, we covered 95% of the budgeted number of municipal programs, covering 57 out of 60 in the year. So looking good there. The ones we didn't cover was just meetings canceled due to holidays, usually November, December, sometimes maybe in the summer. But we only covered 6 general programs last year, and you can have once a month. So we could cover 12. And so we would encourage you to reach out as there's other events in the community that may pop up. If there's a ribbon cutting ceremony for a new building or a new road, or things of that nature that you would like us to attend, we'd be more than happy to do that. And one way that you can do that, South Burlington's trustee, Town Meeting TV trustee, her name is Corey. She might be online. I'm not sure if she was able to attend this evening, but if you're not able to directly email me or ask Jesse for my info, you can ask your trustee to contact me. So that is the programming we've done this past year. And so the second piece of this is funding. So Town Meeting TV is funded in large part by cable subscribers of Comcast and Burlington Telecom. And then municipal contributions help cover other operating costs. So this year for South Burlington, Town Meeting TV is requesting a municipal contribution of $24,310 for general operating funds. And this is a 5% increase from last year. And I realized in what is in your packet on what is the second page of our document, there's a typo of an amount of around $14,000. That was for a different municipality. So for South Burlington, it is what is correct on the first page of $24,310. And so a little bit more about funding. CCTV and Town Meeting TV has been aware of changes that affect our funding sources, and we've been working to diversify our revenue sources since the early 2000s. For example, cable revenue has been declining over the last couple of years, and Town Meeting TV tends to operate in a deficit, which is then covered through fundraising by CCTV, Center for Media and Democracy, which is what Megan co-directs. And so Town Meeting TV, we plan ahead, looking really at the next 5 years. We're thinking about legislative funding, fee-for-service work, other municipal funding. For example, the Vermont Access Network, which is 23 other public access centers across the state, this past legislative season will have approved to receive $1 million in base funding, and that'll be for the next couple of years. And our goal is to have that increase to $2 million in the next 3 years. We are also looking to expand our fee-for-service work through CCTV productions. In other ways, we can provide support for municipalities through recording and archiving programs through Act 133, which is an unfunded mandate, but we're still here to figure out how we can support you. And more on that in a minute. But lastly, I want to make sure we thank our staff. So in the back of the room, y'all know, is our dedicated field producer, Travis. And I want to thank Travis's contribution, to public engagement and democracy. And Travis, the work could not be done without you. So thank you for always being here. Megan, do you have anything you want to add on this part?
Just welcome. There's new faces on the council, and if there are questions that relate to the relationship of CCTV to Town Meeting TV that Jordan mentioned, I welcome those. As she said, franchise fees that are levied on cable subscribers pay for the bulk of Town Meeting TV's budget. And the biggest line item is a contract with CCTV where we manage staff and, sort of the whole human resources part of that for, on behalf of the trustees that manage the Town Meeting TV resources. So it can get into the weeds quickly, but if you have questions about that, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. So you're still seeing declining revenues from the cable tax or with the payment that, yeah.
Correct.
That's what I figured. And that's a federal-based thing. Is that true?
Well, it's brought on by federal legislation, yes, that requires cable companies in exchange for the public right-of-way use. And then it's managed by the Public Service Board, oversees that.
Does the Public Service Board have the authority to levy a special tax on all internet service providers to provide income? No.
No, and we'll quickly get into the weeds if you want, but we did go to the legislature and have spent since 2018 as part of the Vermont Access Network to find other funding mechanisms beyond cable revenue to pay for this project.
Because everybody has cut all their cords, or they're still
Correct,
cutting,
yeah.
right? And so,
Yeah.
but the alternative is that they're all streaming,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
So people are still watching stuff. They're just
Yeah.
not watching it in the way that was captured in a federal mechanism back in 1968 or whenever it started, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You couldn't have envisioned the fact that there would be this thing called the internet.
Yeah, there's a thing called the Internet Freedom Act, which prevents taxing the internet directly. There is a streaming tax in Vermont that is levied on, so if you look at your bill, you'll see a streaming tax, and that goes in one pot of money. What we looked at was levying a streaming tax that would be a gross sales tax on the companies. Of course, that would then get passed on to subscribers, as you know, but and there are a number of states that are doing that. Massachusetts right now is working on a streaming tax to help make up the revenue. We also chased down a pole attachment tax in the legislature, and the legislature wasn't ready last year to pick up another funding mechanism. They were working on a number of other revenue generating mechanisms, and so that's put by the side, which is why we're in the base budget through the Secretary of State's office for this $1 million, and we'll be asking for that to increase to about $2 million over the next 3 years.
And are your recordings stored in the cloud now solely? Or do you have your own servers?
We have our own servers that are backed up redundantly in a storage facility called the Tech Core, which is located in Flynn Avenue. And then we back up our storage to the cloud. And we are also working on a fourth storage mechanism for which gets into, both everything that we create today is an archive. We're creating an archive of history right now, but we also have our archives that go back until the 1980s of content.
The 80s?
1980s, yep.
Nice.
Yep. And in fact, we are having a screening this Thursday night. CCTV will be having a screening that goes into the CCTV archives, goes back before Town Meeting TV existed, as an aside.
Free and open to the public.
Free and open to the public. But it is a challenge to figure out how we're going to pay for this over the, as Jordan said, that diversifying of revenue is something we've been paying attention to and been working on.
So have you had to spend much capital on new hardware in the last couple of years?
Yes, we make things work as long as we can. We're about to build a new storage we're about to build out our storage in the Tech Core. So that'll be the biggest capital project. That'll be the biggest capital project after the website. We're working on a new website. So we've had the same website since 2005. It was the same year that YouTube came out. And we had streaming video. We were very modern and very, ahead of the curve. And one of the things that we want to do is make sure that this archive that's accessible is able, people can find what they're looking for. So if you've gone to the CCTV website to find what you're looking for, sometimes you get a little lost. And that's part of the accessibility, which Jordan referenced in the Act 133 that we want to support. So when Act 133 came down and said all non-advisory board meetings have to be hybrid and also have to be recorded and archived, we take that, we love that, not because it's it's because what we do, it's what we believe in. And that accessibility piece involves having good metadata and having those meetings in a place that people can find them and use them.
Well, I certainly appreciate your expertise and your commitment and the services that we have here, as a city. Does the council have any other comments or questions?
Just clarify, and maybe you could do this, Jesse, but there's two proposed contracts as an 09 A and B for additional coverage of extra meetings. Can you just clarify, are those different timeframes, and are those the meetings that are identified by the state under the new legislation that are required to be covered?
Great question, and that comes next. We haven't gotten to that, but I will answer that in a moment, if that's okay. But this first part is our annual, what would we call this, funding request for operations?
General operations.
General operating.
General operating support for Town Meeting TV is what this first request is. And the second request is a proposal that's actually really coming from the city, and we're giving you a couple of options to look at, and it's really up to Jesse if you want us to be presenting that information, if that's useful.
So just to be very clear, so in the budget, in the city's general fund budget, we have an annual allocation to Town Meeting TV to do based on what they do now, and that's what they've been talking about thus far. Because of the new state statute that was passed that now requires all of our non-policy advising committees to meet this transparency benchmark, we asked Town Meeting TV a couple months ago to put together some proposals for us on what that would cost for them to do it, as opposed to our staff, recording them through YouTube and posting them or recording them through Zoom and posting them to YouTube, thinking that our community's used to going to Town Meeting TV for these resources, and it would be more seamless that way. But I'll let you guys explain. We got this last week, so I'll let you guys explain the difference between the two costs.
Great.
Before you do that, I just want to clarify. So these two contract at the bottom are new expenses that the city would be incurring.
Yes.
The 24,310 is what we've done in the past with a 5% increase.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And these new expenses are new statutory requirements that we have to do. We don't necessarily have to do them through Town Meeting TV, but we have to provide the transparency
Somehow.
to the community.
Yeah. Thank you.
Alrighty. Thank you. So that is part A. So part B is new, new to you, new to us. And so the second item is we prepared two proposals, which you see FY 25-09A and 09B. And so these are two proposal options from our for-hire company, CCTV Productions, that hopefully will serve South Burlington's needs to make 9 advisory meetings accessible to the public through recording and archiving. And again, this is entirely separate from the piece we just discussed. And so in talking with Jared and other folks at South Burlington, the Board of Civil Authority, Planning Commission, Board of Abatement, and Library Board of Trustees are those extra meetings, which averages to, they decided about 64 meetings a year. And you can kind of see that first column, Board of Civil Authority is about 7 meetings a year, Planning Commission 26 a year, and then the same numbers for the last two. And so this first estimate, estimate A, in the amount of $34,800, is similar to what you already see here at City Council meetings or the Tuesday night Development Review Board meetings, where this first estimate is saying that we would record the meeting remotely, but we would be there live, but remotely, from a remote location, and stream it to our YouTube channel for the public to access. We would add on-screen text, what we call lower thirds at the bottom, that follow along with the agenda items. So if someone, doesn't want to watch the 2-hour meeting, they can just scrub through and find, at 1 hour and 30 minutes was the Town Meeting TV presentation. And we would also make sure that the meeting is being recorded in case a South Burlington staff member forgets to press record on the Zoom meeting. So hopefully this would remove some of the stress from South Burlington staff, so that we would be there to record it. And we would also be making sure that there's quality audio and video, so it's not just being recorded in kind of a garbled mess, or maybe someone forgot to turn on the microphone. So we would be there to assist. We'd be there remotely to assist. And what we call clickable agendas, or like the on-screen text at the bottom that goes with the agenda item, we hope allows, the public to be able to, search these long meetings for the items that they're looking for. And then after the meeting happens, it's available on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, where it's available instantly because it's there live, and also on the CCTV website, and then we would archive it in our redundant storage that Megan talked about. So it's backed up and backed up and backed up. So that is option A, which is the larger option, a little more involved. Option B, scaled it back a little bit. So option B is the amount of $23,400. It's still all of the same meetings, but we would not be there in person. We would, a day or two later, receive the Zoom recording or GoToMeeting recording from South Burlington City staff after the meeting. We would add very little on-screen text. The word I want to use is editing, but it's not really editing. We would really just add text on the video that says, South Burlington Planning Commission, November 17th, 2024. And that would be it, just so that we know what the meeting was. And then it would, a couple days later, it would take us a couple days to process that, and then it would be available for playback similarly on our website and our YouTube channel, and would be archived and stored redundantly. So I believe that kind of I hope that explains the difference between the two. So the tail end is similar. We would still be, with Act 133, we would still be archiving it and saving it and making it available on both our website and our YouTube, but the big difference is more of our involvement and also how to make these recordings maybe more accessible, not just having it on our website, but on-screen text or being able to scroll or scrub to certain points in the meeting. Megan, anything I'm leaving out?
Sounds great.
Great.
Very clear.
And so, yeah, this is a new proposal. As Jesse said, South Burlington will have to figure out some way to do this, whether it's with CCTV, with us, with CCTV, or with someone else. But we hope to continue this partnership. It's been great working for the city council, help with the city council meetings and development review board meetings. And we, hope to expand this if that path is an option. So if there are any questions on Estimate A and Estimate B, we welcome those. Thank you.
Is there any room for AI to do any work for you in that, to automate stuff?
That's a good question. Maybe. And I think what we're seeing right now, like one example that was new this year, transcribing meetings or summarizing meetings. And we actually have been experimenting it a little bit. Like, what if we take a 4-hour meeting and ask AI, ChatGPT to summarize it for us? And it, maybe does an okay job, but, is it really summarizing it or really, keeping it more factual? So I think in our television world, there's some of that, or also with transcribing, that's something we've tried. Our channels are now captioned, and we're working on finishing that project, but you can give a video to editing software and it can transcribe it, and it's kind of accurate, but it's not great with maybe spellings of certain things or things like that.
The channel captioning is well into the high 80s in accuracy, and it's a trainable model that we're using. So we are using AI to do what Jordan said is the channel captioning. And we have talked about putting together a grant putting together a grant request to do some funding around specifically that testing certain meetings for that transcript reliability. So right now it takes staff time. As you know, if you've used OtterBot or any of those other kind of AI meeting transcripts, and you go back and you go, that's what you thought we were talking about? So it does take staff time to do that, and that's something that we would like to put out a grant proposal to experiment with.
And if you use it, you may have to turn on another reactor at 3 Mile Island, unfortunately.
Well, there's that piece of it as well.
Mike?
Yeah, thank you. I guess I'll defer to Jesse and her team to give us advice on how to meet this obligation, whether through the service they are suggesting here or not. But one thing that I heard today that I think is so important, regardless of any way we go, is that sort of ability to suggest what's going on in the meeting. I mean, hopefully we're not just doing this because it's a legal requirement. If we're going to do that, we might as well make it beneficial to to the people of our community, to the reporters who report on our activities, and anything having, I think, all of us gone to and watched these things. It requires a lot of time and effort. And I think in our effort to create equity and possibility for people who can't come to these sessions to, at their own leisure and time, to quickly know that they can go in there and get to the one agenda item that maybe issue is, I think is a great service if we could do it, whichever route we go.
Andrew?
Yeah, Jesse, are we being asked to make a decision on this, or are you going to come back with a recommendation? Or
You do not need to make a decision tonight.
Okay.
It will be an option for you to consider as part of your budget conversations.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions from council? Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, thank you. And I will say that we're available if you have any questions that come up afterwards. Any other further investigations, and thanks for listening to us.
Yeah, thank you.
And thanks for your election coverage.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's like our Christmas or holiday. Yeah, we love it. I mean, Jordan worked really hard on pulling that all together, as well as all the other staff, but it is we're really proud of that program and programming that we do. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And thank you for Travis.
Yes, thank you, Travis, once again.
Thank you very much. All right, moving on to item 8, which is receive and consider approving the FY25 work plans from the following city policy committees: Bike and Ped, Economic Development, Energy and Natural Resources and Conservation. We will start with Bike and Ped. Come on down.
Hi, Havla.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for hosting us, or hosting me, on behalf of the Bike Ped Committee. I've got my card. First, I always start with gratitude. And so thank you all for being on City Council. I think it's a lot of work. We spend a lot of time on Bike Ped, and I don't think it compares to really what you do on City Council, so thank you. I also want to call out my fellow committee members. It's really a privilege to work with them. I have learned so much, and they have so much thought and care in and knowledge and expertise in what they bring to our meetings. So I appreciate them. And for Erica Quellen, our fabulous liaison, who just has been doing marvelous work. So we're very grateful on Bike Ped. Number 2, I know it's for Workplan, but I feel badly, sorry. I would be remiss if I did not bring up the death that occurred on Shelburne Road last week. That's the 3rd one on Shelburne Road in about a year or two. At least the 2nd or 3rd on Fayette. It's the same freaking spot. There is an engineering problem. So we knew about this beforehand, and we talked about it at our last Bike Ped meeting. Erica had already requested that we do, I think, a scoping analysis, and she can use the correct term, but essentially looking into that more and advising VTrans on some engineering measures that would help us engineer this to be a safe place for people to bike and walk. We can't ask people to bike and walk places if they're getting killed by cars. So what I would ask for the committee, and probably work with Mark Scanlon, at some point I think we need to write a letter to VTrans urging them to take up some of the recommendations that will come from this scoping work. I think they're ones that VTrans may not necessarily want to take up. Historically, I'll share with you my experience and my understanding. Historically, VTrans is really set up to help cars move faster and traffic move faster. It's not designed, and their priority is not for pedestrian safety. Our other example is Route 116, Heinsberg Road. We requested that the speed limits be dropped because there's quite a few pedestrians, and a traffic study is done, and they measure the speeds. The average speed in the section I live in, which is farther toward the South Burlington line, is about 50 miles an hour. It's supposed to be 40 to 45. And VTrans sets the speed by how fast the cars are going. That's how they decide what the appropriate speed is for the road. It's not for the vulnerable users. And I think that thinking is really not appropriate for thickly settled places. So I think when I think we get more information about specific measures, and we can do more targeted letter, I'd like to work with Mike Scanlon to maybe compose something to have it come from the council. So we'll give you some time to think about it, and we'll get some good information. And I'd like to do, personally, I think it's best to do a strategic letter citing really some specific things that we'd like to see, and not just a this is wrong and please fix it kind of letter. I think it'll carry a little bit more weight. That is my opinion, but you can do what you want, but we're advocates. All right, on to the work plan, which is the actual content from the agenda item. The things I think I'd like to highlight for us is, if you look in our task section for the Bike Ped Committee, it's a lot of advocacy, advocating for where funding should be allocated, what kind of facilities should be built, promoting a culture of safety, having events with the public, partnering with Safe Routes to School. That was just a new task force, and we're looking forward to working with them more. And we're looking forward to partnering with Parks and Rec to offer more programming. I think a few other things I'd like to highlight: the sidewalk and path inventory. Those were the scooters that went through and did all the inventory. They've collected the data. We don't have all of it back yet, but we'll be making some recommendations from that data about what sort of repair, what's the state of our sidewalk and shared use path, what the status of them are, and where we need to work on them. And we know there's some work that needs to be done. Toward the bottom of the list, the other things that we talked about was the American League of Bicyclists designate cities to be bicycle friendly. We are currently a bronze level, and every couple of years you can reapply. And so this year we're eligible to reapply, and we'll be reapplying for a silver status. And then lastly, toward the bottom of our work list, was reaching out to our fellow bike ped sort of counterparts in the neighboring communities, just to have conversations, because I feel like you learn a lot organically from talking with people, with Shelburne, Burlington, Winooski, Williston. We're kind of the cut through for a reason, so it's good for us to talk to our colleagues. And I think those would be the main points I wanted to highlight.
Thank you. Questions from councilors?
No, I think, Lori, you brought this up, but I know I've heard this at a couple other coffee with a counselor sessions about this particular committee's emphasis on bike versus ped, and I think you've certainly got some items in here that show some balance, but I would also echo that there are a number of community members that are as interested in the pedestrian access and safety.
And I just want to say on that point, I think some of it is perception as opposed to what's actually going on. And there might be a way to better communicate to the public what you guys are doing so that they recognize the work that's being done in that area. So I just wanted to throw that up.
Thank you. We've had that too, and I do bring that up with the committee. And we try to think about it both ways. I don't think we have, well, I think we haven't expanded our walking as much. I'm just thinking if there's sort of an equivalent walking. I think AARP has some work on making a more walkable community. We're not quite there yet, but I think our growth in our path system aims to address both of them. And I think safety and advocacy, part of that is people sharing the path. That's a lot of the challenges we hear about from path users.
And I think, because when we talked about this earlier, you had emphasized last year sort of the three flagship things that you always raise visibility on were the crossings on Wilson. Mm-hmm. And so part of it is, I think, was Lori just said, is about the connection. And so I think, as we discussed in the meeting, how to use the new webpage as a way to have that more active communication. But I think when we've heard of pedestrian, it's really also a lot been about the crossings. And so I think that's a citywide challenge. But
I think so. That's where, and it'll come up in the actually, another thing I didn't say, but the active transportation plan is being finished up at this time, and I believe it'll be presented to council in February when you're at a lull. And you'll see, and that's part of what we're looking at exactly. It's where the crashes are happening, and it's at the crossings, and those are some of the things that we're looking at and thinking about reworking, which should benefit everybody.
One other thing I'd like to mention is you talked about VTrans being focused on car throughput. I think in many ways our city is still focused that way also, whether it's lights being sequenced for the cars rather than sequenced for the pedestrian. And if we want people to walk more and to use active transportation more, I hope we make it easier for them and maybe a little harder for cars so that there's an incentive there. And I hope you guys think about that as you're doing your work plan.
I want to point out that VTrans did a lot of work from Taft Corner all the way to Lefty's Golf, or wherever
Yep.
it's not right, where they reconstructed the road from scratch, took out the whole thing, put in gravel, and then they created bike lanes on the sides, and they had special bike stop areas, at critical intersections and stuff like. Because I rode that with Local Motion and people at Earl's when they finally finished it right.
Yep.
And then the diverging diamond work they're doing at exit 16, right, which is not complete yet, but they have created space for bike and ped underneath the 89 overpass, right, to get through safely, because before that there was nothing.
Yes.
So they understand, but those capital projects take time and a lot of money.
One thing that hopefully should help, VTran mentioned at a recent GMT meeting, or at the, I'm sorry, not at the GMT meeting, at the Transportation Summit, that they'll be releasing a new updated guidebook on standards for paths, for walkways, for bike paths, for crossings and pedestrians, they're not mandated, but they will basically help, in particular, targeting communities that aren't as fortunate to have as we have, and amazing staffs, to basically have the ability to adopt those. So I agree with you, Tim. I think they're coming around to this thinking.
Andrew?
I have so the city has, I guess, a lot of sources of information about areas that could be improved from a bike ped perspective. Like, I know we have this website that individual, residents can submit traffic evaluation, requests, recommendations. We have the Safe Routes to School task force that's identifying things, and we have the active transportation plan that has its own set of things coming out of bike ped. Do you think that our process kind of for collating that and ensuring that all those requests are kind of seen through one lens and prioritized is working well? Do you see that process?
I think we're heading in that direction. I'm not sure we're exactly there yet, but I think we're heading in that direction. Safe Routes to School in particular is a very new task force, and they're figuring out what they need. They're figuring out their place in the city. Where would they get a budget? Where should they go to ask for things? I feel like there's such across, they're not part of bike ped. They're part of a lot of different pockets, and so they just need their own place. And I think we're not necessarily quite there yet, but I think we're getting there. And I think having the active transportation plan, at least for bike ped, kind of puts it out there. So we've got one central document to at least start from, and start pulling in other things to make a citywide plan. Does that answer your question? I think we're getting there. There's a lot going on in South Burlington. It's a lot to keep track of. And I think we all, and the good thing is, I think our goals, our hearts are in the right places. We want really, I think, for the most part, a lot of the same things. And it's kind of getting everything in the same place so that it's organized. I think it's getting there.
What are the top two projects you're most excited about for the next year and a half, 2 years?
Oh, okay. I think I'm excited about the 2 years. 3, right? It's the bridge. Yeah, it's totally the bridge. Totally the bridge. I'm excited for the bridge. And then as someone who bikes to work, I am excited for the Spear Street path. And that will just take me completely off the road. That is where I'm the most vulnerable.
There you go.
And so I am personally excited for that part. And we have lots of other good projects, but that's the one that affects me the most.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions?
Can I clarify one thing that came up? And this, you probably can't answer this, but I was under the impression that when we looked at speed limits on Market Street, we were limited to 25 miles an hour. And then Burlington has created some areas that are now 20 miles an hour. Does anyone know the difference? I was trying to evaluate what the difference was and why they could do it and we could not.
Let me double check one thing. I think I have the answer, but I don't want to speak out.
I think the answer is you have to be a designated downtown in order to go below 25 miles an hour per state statute. And there's been conversation at the state level to change that, especially with the designations changing, but I think that's what it is. But Erica,
That's what my guess was going to be, and I was going to try to double check it.
Am I correct that, I know the designations are changing, but were we not one of the steps for our TIF in our downtown area was to move in that direction, or?
So we have 3 designations in our TIF district already. One of them is not a designated downtown yet, but it could be in the future, depending on how the designations at the state level go. But that wouldn't, that would work for Garden and Market, but not other areas of the city.
I think that was, I can't remember which plan it was part of, but it was promoting the 20 is plenty in neighborhoods, which don't always have marked, like my neighborhood doesn't really have a marked speed limit, but 20 would be great. Because we have lots, when you go that slow, kids can play in the streets and it's so much more fun. I love going in my neighborhood walking and seeing so many kids outside playing. They're running all over the place. It feels like the 1970s again. In such a good way.
Great, Havala, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, Avala.
Up next, economic development. Tom Bailey, before we start, can I just take the temperature of the people that were here for the BCA and whether they need a break or not, or everybody okay? Huh? After this one? Okay, so after this 5-minute break for those who have been here since 5:30.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Good evening, Tom.
So, Economic Development Committee, we have one of our members, Stephanie Higgins, is here. And of course, Alana is our staff person. And this is the next generation of members. What?
Srini's on the screen too.
Oh, Srini's up. Good. Okay. And I know John Burton was planning to call in, so I'm not sure. Oh, here he is. Good.
Pull your mic closer to you, please.
I shall. If you've read them, you can see that we sort of have 2 separately formatted documents that constitute our work plan. The way this one was done was we were in a meeting and I asked everybody, went around the room and said, what in the economic development sphere do you think we should do? What do you want to do? And which is usually a way to encourage the people to pick the stuff they want to work on. And so they produced stuff, and I tried to consolidate it as best I could here. And then Alana took that and put it into more of a PPS 25 format. And so we had a discussion about our work plan in the last meeting and just decided to adopt put both together. Really, what it's going to come down to is I think everybody has a fairly clear idea of where we're going, and it's really what they want to work on, because all of the work, most of the work will occur outside of meetings anyway. So I could talk some more, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Do you want to give us a quick overview of what you think the 3 or 4 major things are that you're going to
Well,
on this year?
First, there's a strategic economic development plan, and that's going to be key for us for the year. And then there's a lot of coordinate. I did it in the format of coordinating, communicating, and collaborating. Of course, we have been coordinating for a while now with the Tech Hub operation out of UVM and the Office of Engagement run by Trish Coates. And she's done some really interesting things in terms of regional coordination, which I think will be important for us because it is the context with which all economic development occurs, not just the city. Then we've also been coordinating with HULA. And our last meeting, which was last Tuesday, was we had the CEO of HULA, Lucia Campriello, come, along with Mike Biama, who's the landlord of Tech Park, effectively, and who also used to be on the committee, but he moved to Shelburne. Because HULA is the incubator space, and Mike would be the next stage up of where something might reasonably go. It was a good conversation, and it's one where I hope to follow up with both of them and say, because they didn't know each other face to face really before that, and say, so how are you, how's that going? Are you still talking to each other? because I think that's how economic development will occur. We just want to coordinate with other organizations that are concerned about economic development, like Vermont Business Roundtable and Vermont Futures, and then try to be a source of regional cooperation as well. I've been doing some outreach with others in the region, and I think, well, I mean, Hula is obviously in Burlington. I've done a little outreach with Burlington as well. I think, to quote Mike Scanlon, from a point I made in UVM Rise in August, from economic development, we all need to work together on this and lift all boats. So certainly our plan is important, but it's within that context. And then let's see. One thing is we're supposed to report to you, and is quarterly okay? I mean,
Did you ask is quarterly okay?
yeah. If I come in, or our committee comes in once a quarter.
Well, I mean, that's fine. You could submit them, to us if you want.
If that works for you, then,
That's fine.
that's what we'll do.
Just do keep in mind that the liaisons are regularly reporting after each meeting.
Okay.
So if you would like to come in, I think that's fine, but also it's
It's your call.
about a lot.
Yep. It's really, your call. We're trying to support the South Burlington Collaborative. Then there's work on keeping track of what is going on at the airport, which is a lot. We've already had Nick Longo come to one of our meetings and do a full brief. Revitalizing the foreign trade zone, which is the bailiwick of GBIC, and maybe encouraging foreign direct investment, Quebec, to come down there. That's going to be complicated, but interesting. One of the things was conversion of the former Sears building, and then tracking warehouse, trying to find a way to centralize how warehousing is available within the region, so that people can have one way to access it, like real estate is pretty well organized and everybody knows how to get at it. And then Stephanie had actually suggested workforce and employer training, child care, which John Burton and I had done some work up on last year, and then trying to have South Burlington do a better fiber network. So some of this work has already started with our members, and fortunately we have new people. We've got talent, so I'm excited about the committee in terms of what we're going to be able to produce. And we already have members teaming up and working on things, starting on some of these projects. I don't know. That's basically it. And if you have any questions of me or want anything else, that's great. Alana is here and Stephanie is here. And Stephanie has already given evidence of working hard outside, working with Chris Kerrigan on projects. Chris has been great, just with his background on the State Chamber of Commerce and then going to UVM. UVM, I hope, will be a real resource for us as well. So, anyway, I'll stop. Go ahead. What can I help you?
So you're really waiting for this economic development plan process because you have to select the consultant, right? And then
Yep.
Is it, you think it's going to take 6 months to 9 months to do that plan? Do we know?
Go ahead.
Oh,
Here.
Ms. Blanchard, please
Okay.
touch the green light.
Alana Blanchard. So we did interview consultants last week, and they provided a range of schedules. So we expect 6 months to a year for a completed plan for your adoption.
Okay, great. And then that plan will give you the real meat for actions that move forward with and after that in the following year?
I don't quite see it that way. I think we're working.
Okay.
And if we can produce things and make collect information, then and produce something in niches that would be helpful, and advise the city council about in the areas of our skill set. That's great. I'm very excited about the plan as well, but we'll see what it produces over time, and I think good things. I'm looking forward to the recommendations that come out of it. I don't think everything should stop because we're waiting on a plan to be completed.
I didn't mean to
Yeah.
to imply that. So, have any businesses, distinct businesses, come to you with ideas of something they would like to do, or they have a complaint that they're hoping that you could help with, either through the planning commission or through city staff?
I think Alana probably gets the most complaints, just because she sees our staff. We are obviously, connected with SPBA and South Burlington Business Association, and John he's on their board. So they have concerns. We have tried to reach out to businesses. That's part of our guest program, which I didn't really talk about. We've tried to bring in guests to a lot of the meetings that would be relevant to things that we should learn about and would allow our work to go forward well, such as the meeting that we had last week with a theme. And we've done that somewhat over the last year. You sat in on some, Tim, and Andrew's our liaison, so he's seen it as well. And that's been helpful, I think, just because it gives everybody a frame and also information. They can ask questions and get a sense of that person's perspective of what life is like. My experience is people don't reach out to committees. The committees have to reach out. It's not, we're an advisory committee. We don't really bring anything to the table other than the work we do. So, when I got on economic development, 2.5 years ago, there was sort of the attitude, I think, that people should just come to the Economic Development Committee and they would opine about economic issues because that's where the talent was. Nobody comes. So, I think we have to reach out and be active participants as best we can with all of the forces that are at work. And some of it is just meeting people. Some of what I've tried to do is just go to meet folks in the municipalities, like Elaine Haney, who's on the city council in Essex Junction. She and I met for coffee after I happened to run into her. And she's an exciting person, but she would be somebody who would show a frame of reference of what other municipalities are doing, which could be valuable for us and for the plan. The consultant would have people to reach out to that we know because we've made outreach, and then they might be able to, that would be a source of where they're going to get their data. These apparently, as I gather, are all national firms, so they may not, I don't know anything about them, of course, but they may not have a lot of background in South Burlington or Vermont and need to at least be given some help.
So apart from the economic plan, and I don't want to harp on this, but do you have a couple of real deliverables that the city would be interested in trying to work on, from a development perspective or from some other perspective that would be output from the committee that would be something that the city could use?
I just told you what we were working on.
I know.
If we were actually to revitalize the foreign trade zone and encourage Quebec property to come down and utilize it, that would be huge. Why? Because if it were, for instance, out near the airport, like Beta, then there's our tax base increasing without even really increasing housing, which of course all the businesses need. But and that's where suddenly our city becomes more sustainable from a tax perspective over time. And then all the other things that go with having a business locally that's a higher end business that employs good people. That's just one example. And Alana wants to add.
I just want to help to summarize this. I think a lot of the work of the committee has been information gathering, but also collaboration and developing contacts within the region. And those can be very valuable in understanding our South Burlington economy, how we fit into the region, and also what resources are within the region to support our economy or to support various economies working together. For example, the tech group, or I'm sorry, not the tech group, the tech hub, so many techs around. So the tech hub is a great example where UVM convened folks to talk to each other, and then members of the Economic Development Committee independently also collaborated across the tech sector within South Burlington and brought those folks together. So just by being a connector and encouraging folks to collaborate, the Tech Hub has a much more significant presence in South Burlington than it would without that direct knowledge of the economy. So I think we're really, because the plan is is about to go and I want to say go underway, but that's not what it's going to start happening, and it will have to happen pretty quickly in order to make the best use of the consultant's time. This information and resource exploration that the committee is doing will be very helpful during the development of the strategic plan. And then also there may be projects that are identified out of this work that then can be brought forward to the council.
Last year at this time, we were fortunate to have Kirk Dombrowski, who's the VP of Research at UVM, and Tricia Coates they were our guests, and that was really when the Tech Hub work was starting. We all know each other now, and they know us, and they know what resources we bring to the table. So it isn't a deliverable like, I don't know, we can't say next month we're going to have X necessarily. Maybe in a perfect world, we would be our own local GBIC. If we had staff, maybe that would be more practical. But you know, that's kind of where I see us going.
Great. I think John wants to say a few words. John Burton, here you are.
And that ties in well with the idea that Emma Schuldeis had. She's also a new member about having a catalog of business spaces, warehouses, and stuff like that. She thought of that separately. Then we have Mike Biama come in as a guest and talk to us, and suddenly, you know, maybe there's something we can do there that would help South Burlington have a better you know, provide more sustainability to the city.
Okay, thank you. Comments from councilors? Questions?
I have a quick comment, and I think you guys are doing great work and are probably already focusing on this, but I just want to reiterate for me the importance of development of incentivizing and supporting locally owned businesses, particularly small business and startups, and in all categories, including innovative and new business sectors.
We are fortunate to have Becca Killian also on our committee, and she is very excited about micro businesses and small businesses. And that's going to be some work that she and others will be doing.
From a resilience and sustainability standpoint, the more we have strong local business, those dollars circulate through our economy much stronger than other businesses, and it gives us a resilience that I think we're really going to need going forward. So I
can think of two
throw
right
that
now.
out. What?
And they can be taxed.
Yes.
They can be taxed as well.
That's right.
Yeah. So, anything else for
Their
me?
products can be taxed.
That's right.
So,
Part of the 1%.
if there are no other questions, thanks, Tom.
Okay. Thank you.
We are going to take a break now, and when we come back, we have somebody from the public who wants to comment on the bike and ped plan, and then when we're done with the four, we'll take votes on accepting their plans, okay? All right, so a 5-minute break. Thank you. So we have 5 counselors back, and we're going to resume the meeting. So we have to pause our conversations in the audience for now. Thank you. Nice to see you, Larry, too. Yeah. We have Roseanne Greco, who would like to make a comment on the bike and ped plan. So we're going to just step back a second and give her a chance to speak. Good evening, Roseanne. You're muted. Thank you, Roseanne. I had a personal experience last week. A person on an electrified, I don't want to call it a bike. It was more like an electric motorcycle, but they started at Airport Mobile, and I followed them, and they were on the bike path, and I was on the street, and I was going 43 miles an hour, and they were still accelerating away from me on the bike path. Now, luckily, there was nobody on the path. I've never seen a vehicle like that go so fast on a bike path. It was pretty scary, and they were gone. I don't know where they went. So. I see Mr. Doyle has his camera on. Did you want to make a comment on what? And could you just identify yourself, please?
Brookwood neighborhood near city center. I think the committee itself, there's comments about them focusing on bikes rather than pedestrians, and I go to all of their meetings and haven't found that to be the case. I think there's a really robust discussion about a lot of concerns, and the limitation hasn't been the committee itself, but the uptake and the financing for more projects at the council level. We had really great advocacy last year, and you guys did increase some budgets, especially for like painting crosswalks and things like that. Bob has just done a wonderful job of keeping track of things and really pushing on the budget line items. But it is really difficult to consolidate and make big improvements without engineering plans that are accurate. And I don't mean each individually created plan, but a set of design standards. We still don't have them. We have public works standards that have 7 pages dedicated to things that might relate to pedestrian or bike infrastructure, but that's really not what is being looked for. Both for the what Havila was talking about with the applying for silver level community, they're looking for a more robust design standard for bike and pedestrian facilities. And I think that will also help address concerns like what Roseanne has, where separating bike facilities from walk facilities is still an important thing in a lot of areas, and right sizing them to the amount of use that they get. The active transportation plan, you'll see the engineers will recommend doing this when they present it in February. But just another thing to keep on your minds that we'd still have to adopt or pay for some consulting to help adopt something like that if we want to make better changes towards walk and bikeability, particularly when it comes to crossings and intersections.
Thank you, Brian. So now we're going to move on to the Energy Committee's plan. And before us, we have Steve Crowley, the chair. Good evening.
Hello, thanks. Thanks for having us here. And it's always exciting to go through our list, our wish list of what we hope to accomplish in the next year. So I guess I also want to start out by expressing appreciation. We have a great committee. You know, we have people who are educators and engineers and, modelers of energy systems and people who do installations of solar and weatherization. So we have a really a great group of talented people. So for me, it's just really an honor to work with these folks. We get great support from Nick Atherton and other city staff, people in the whether it's Jesse or folks in the library, where we've done a number of book events. We did a major, I'm sure most of you attended the Energy Festival that was out in Market Street. And so it's really taken a lot of support from other folks around the city, and that's been really appreciated. So we took a look at the policy priorities and strategies spreadsheet that came from you folks, and particularly the stuff where there's an overlap with our work. And a lot of it seems to be, a lot of our key work seems to be supporting the development of a lot of different things, LDRs, Economic Development Plan, website communications. So we're looking forward to doing a lot of kind of support work in those areas that are really initiated elsewhere. We are, I guess notably, some of the most important pieces of that spreadsheet are kind of on hold until we have our climate coordinator on staff. So a lot of those elements of this work plan will, flow through that person. So we are just leaving that alone for now. But we'll go back, and once that person is in place and sort of gets their feet on the ground, we'll probably be doing some rethinking about all that. But the other thing that we really have been doing a lot of, and that we hope to continue to do, is to look at the opportunities for extending what we do beyond just the walls of City Hall, to get around the community, to bring people in, to meet people where they are. There are so many ways where, there's things the city can do that the state or national government can't do. There are things that happen that are outside the realm of the city, but still take a lot of people and a lot of awareness, a lot of engagement. So we're really looking at that, as well as all these support activities within the city. We've thrown a bunch of ideas around. We've thought about doing packaging a Climate 101 discussion or series of discussions that we could take to other places, other community rooms and senior center and other places around the city churches, for example, where we could meet with people and engage people. And you know, one of the things that we are kind of flying blind on is what do people think? What do people know about all this? You know, to those of us who are actively involved, it seems like, well, everybody must be up to speed on this. But that's one of the things that we want to explore a little more. We've talked a bunch. One of the pieces that's in that spreadsheet is about what to do about the unexpected. And so we've talked about putting together a short series of sessions focused on climate resilience, where we look at, you know, what are we expecting, what's coming down the pike as far as climate in the next 5 to 10 to 15 years. We have some great resources up at the university who've studied that extensively. We want to look at how those possible events or gradual changes could affect our infrastructure. Everything from, you know, roads and culverts to communications infrastructure, which is often sort of a key link when you look at where climate-related disasters have happened. The communications infrastructure is really critical in keeping people and helping people be resilient. We've talked about having a session on the human element of this, you know, the health-related impacts of climate or of specific disasters, outdoor worker-related issues, the social safety net and mutual aid that might be important. So are we really prepared? Are we really resilient? And then finally, pulling people together to say, well, what can we do about this? So that's just one example. We're brainstorming a lot of different possibilities for reaching out to the public and engaging the public. We're also very actively collaborating in a number of ways. We collaborate extensively with the regional planning, who have a couple of great people working on energy, so they're great resources. There's a statewide network of energy committees that we work with, the VCAN network that some of you may be familiar with. They run conferences and meetings and provide resources. We work with the Renewable Energy Vermont folks who do an annual conference up at often over here at the Doubletree, and they have their work is ongoing throughout the year. We work with an organization called the Vermont Systems Planning Committee, which is kind of an advisory group to the Velco transmission system, to look at the future and see how, you know, how is our energy future looking from that perspective too. So we're collaborating in a lot of different ways. We're in communication with folks at the school department, talking about it, how might we support more and better infusion of climate and energy related issues in the school curriculum. Let's see. So I think that's, I could probably go on. We're looking at doing another energy festival. We skipped a year, but we're thinking of doing one. It's a lot to do. So that was, the skipping of the year was very intentional. I'm looking at my notes. I think that's pretty much what I wanted to make sure to hit on. I wonder if you folks have questions.
Well, I just really appreciate your social media presence, especially on Facebook. Sometimes I'm the first person to hit the like button.
Okay, great.
And I think Facebook gave me some badge for being the person that's, you know, pounded that, you know, several times. But yeah, there's a lot of really great information. So I see you as doing a really good service of disseminating educational information to the public, and then hopefully, you know, to the council as well, gathering and then repackaging it for us, right, as you have in the past. So I really appreciate that. And also, I mean, helping the public with understanding what benefits there could be to them for making some, you know, behavioral changes or, you know, capital investments in their homes, right, in terms of how they heat or cool, and stuff like that.
Right, right. Well, Efficiency Vermont is one of the collaborators that I didn't mention, but
Right.
they're very helpful
Yeah.
in that regard.
Council have other comments and questions?
I have a quick comment. I really appreciate all the work you guys are doing. And hearing your presentation, Steve, it just had my mind wondering whether you guys shouldn't be called the Climate and Energy Committee instead of just the Energy Committee. Because a lot of the work that you're talking about is climate related. And I know we had the climate task force that was put together, but that's just something that came to my mind while I was listening to the presentation, and I think it could be good to have that piece put forward.
Interesting. Well, it's been suggested by regional planning folks that energy committees consider doing that in general, because I think when the idea of energy committees first came out, we were really focused on reducing greenhouse gases. But we now realize that that's not the only aspect of climate that we need to focus on.
Do you get involved much with homeowners associations on the kinds of impacts or the actions that they could encourage within those areas?
So I was on the committee when it first started, and took 10 or 12 years off, and have been on it for a few years again now. And in those specific times, no, we have not so much. But I think in between, there have been, over the years, there have been efforts to reach out to condo associations, homeowner associations. And certainly as we talk about, this idea of packaging a 101, Climate 101 kind of thing, where we could go places and meet with people, that would be the kind of opportunity that we would hope to develop there. Not just talking about, how the climate science or something, but also, responses and actions that people can take. I think, especially, South Burlington, that's a really important aspect of our building makeup here in South Burlington.
Any other questions? What are the top 2 projects you're most excited about next year?
Well, I'm very excited about getting our new staff person on board because I think that opens up a world of opportunity for us. So, and that's like a whole, 7 or 8 items on the list that came from you folks that all look great. I am really eager to see what we can do with this, reaching out to more people in the public and, informal organizations or churches or, what are the networks that we can tap into within the city that bring us closer to the people that live here.
Would you like me to give a quick update on that hiring process?
Yeah.
So I think perhaps some folks know this. We were overwhelmed by applications for this job. We got 50 applications for this position. Keep in mind we have 10 vacancies in our police department, so different. We did a first round of interviews with about 10 of them. And are going through second round interviews with 4 of them now. We've had 2 already. We have 2 to come. We will wrap those up right before the Thanksgiving holiday, and then hope to make an offer early December. So hoping that in the new year we have that person on board. And I will tell you that the 4 candidates are each really amazing and really different from one another. So it's going to be an interesting task to decide between the skill sets. But we'll get you somebody great.
Well, I'm not surprised. As I, collaborate and meet with people around the state and talk to them about South Burlington Energy Committee and what we do here, many people have said that our reputation is out there as a city that has done a lot of great work. And so if somebody wants to be on the forefront of energy planning and climate response in Vermont, probably anywhere in northern New England, I would even guess, they might look here. So I didn't mention Muprasi, who's also a great asset to our community. I don't want to, that would be terrible if I didn't mention Lou. So,
All right, great, Steve.
thank you.
Thank you very much. And next up is Natural Resources and Conservation. Jean-Sébastien Cholot is here tonight. Come on down. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. How are you? Yeah, sure. All right. And Dave Wheeler. There we go. So, the NRCC is a 9-member committee. Right now we have 5 active members. So one of our big things is to recruit, to get enough voices and have a quorum. We historically don't have a quorum issue. Our members are usually there every time, except for traveling, but when one is gone, we don't have a quorum. So that's a big thing. To angle to this recruiting is at the personal level, socially, and in a more formal level with advertisement using the city resources. I think those are the 2 things to bring more members on board. So that's an important part. Just like the Energy Committee, we based our action on the 2025 priorities. I guess the big lines on that is very importantly for the natural resources is knowing where and what is going on. So acquiring data and categorizing and having information to be able to, for the city to take the best decision. And that's really the open space plan, the mapping of resources, of wildlife corridors or wildlife is something that is a big thing happening in 2025. So that's going to be really core to what we do. And also internally, having a better understanding of what's going on at the DRB level with the projects and at which level we could advise or recommend a solution on plans. So this is an important angle. And about the planning, so planning the open space plan for the upcoming future, as I said, is important. And also the hubbard space, managing, establishing, and understanding how we're going to be involved into the hubbard open space. And also for outreach as a fourth topic, improve our webpage based on the new city web design. So we are starting working on that, and also put together events. We had put in one event. There's another one coming up, so be more present when it comes to public outreach via events. Also, on the priorities, I don't know if we should go over every single topic and how we're going to be active in it, but we identified a handful, 10 initiatives in which we will participate, like the city green, like the downtown vision with the LDR and the infield, the airport, what's going to happen on Airport Parkway, and Also, one important thing we want to put forward is the increase in community garden. South Burlington has a couple of community gardens today. There's a huge public demand for it, and we're going to look into, and that's part of what's going on at the airport, but it could be also in the new plan for the open space.
Are you getting much requests from the DRB to consult with applicants on projects that come before them at this point, or in the last year?
Not enough, no.
Not enough?
No.
Do you see that there are opportunities that aren't being realized for you to participate in that process where you think that you should be asked?
Yes. Yeah, clearly. So right now we review what's current and what could affect or could be affecting natural resources. I can say this is a bulletproof process. I'd like to have something more established for each meeting for us to review what could benefit from a comment or something we could help having a better plan.
Is that a question for planning and zoning to ask why they don't get asked very often to participate, or is it just because of that collection of applications that have come across? They don't need that?
So there is a DRB policy about when they engage committee members.
Right.
I don't know the answer directly to that question. I think you could invite in the DRB chair, Paul Connor or Marla, and have them answer that. But there is the policy's on the DRB website.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
That's a conversation that I was part of at an NRCC meeting, and there was a question of where and how the NRCC interfaces with land development, and whether the policy from planning and zoning is that they interface with the planning commission and setting the rules, or whether they are able to interface during the development process. And it seems to be unclear as to which, or whether both of those are supposed to be places that they're actively involved.
So I think that's pretty clear. The policy advising committees are policy advising to the council. They set policy, they don't regulate. So to the extent that any committee wants to, through this work plan process, recommend policy changes, that goes either to the planning commission if it's an LDR thing, or to the council. Then the DRB, as the regulators of the city, have the ability to call in a committee if they feel like they don't have the professional expertise either on staff or on the development side, or an open question about a specific city priority that they want additional feedback on.
Right. I think our hope is that we can help the DRB by being able to raise a flag saying this might be on our CC, where we can give you advice on how this development could be taking in account what's going on.
Yeah, and I think the challenge with that is that the DRB's role for the council and the community is really to regulate according to the standards. So there should be less interpretation of what's gone on through the projects. I think to the extent that the NRCC feels like there's a missing gap in those regulations, that's really the policy guidance that I think the Planning Commission and the council would want.
Yeah.
I think inserting more folks into the review process is not necessarily in everybody's best interest.
I just hope that if there's a question, on a particular application that they could furnish an opinion on, that they're being solicited for that. That's all. Yeah. So they're not.
And if there's a specific concern about that for a project, let's talk about that for sure.
And my hope would be that prior to a project getting to the DRB, when the planning office is working with the developer around a project, where it's appropriate, it could be useful to have the NRCC put eyes on it and give suggestions to the developer to make it more accurately fulfill the goals of the council, the commission, and the NRCC. But it sounds like that's contrary to. So.
I mean, I really see that as staff's role. wonderful that you all have set the policy you set and we implement it. And so often those conversations are preliminary before any public record is generated. So it would be it would be adding a regulatory layer into our review process. I think to the extent that there's policy questions, yes, absolutely. And I think that's where Dave and Paul and others kind of strategize about what needs to advance.
Did you have a question? Yeah.
So good to see you both. Thank you for all you do. Just, it's a question with respect to the open space master plan. And maybe I should just, presumably that plan is going to have some detailed management plans for each of our open spaces. Is that what we're anticipating? And if so, would you intend to kind of get involved in reviewing those detailed plans so we get the NRCC lens in terms of what, say best science would indicate is an appropriate way to manage our various open spaces?
Yeah, both are different. The open space plan being more of a general guidelines and policies, I guess, where each specific for each park, like the Hubbard Park, being so. The Hubbard has a very specific wetland and use. So I think it's, how would I answer that? On both sides, basically, the answer is we're going to look specifically at Hubbard plan for a management plan, and the open space plan, we're going to collaborate with the CRO to put it together. Did I answer your question?
So those are going to be two different things, you think, then? There'll be, the open space plan will be kind of at a more general, higher level.
Right.
And then to come up with detailed plans for each parcel you think is a separate exercise?
I would say, yeah.
Because they're different areas?
Yeah, because and
yeah.
I think the open space plan is a long term, is more long term when there is a park that can pop up and decide there is a new park, that would be more a reactive preparation into that specific park.
So in that plan, if there's a recommendation to maybe establish a community garden, that would be an opportunity to get you involved?
Yep, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And also for rewilding?
Yes.
It's a new verb I haven't heard before, but I like it.
I guess I'm wondering whether that's something we need to talk or think about. I guess I would have hoped if we have a consultant doing an open space plan, that perhaps there would be some more detail around particular areas where there have been some questions and kind of community feedback.
Yeah, they're coming to the NRCC meeting in December to meet with NRCC, so we'll talk with the consultant and review the whole scope of work and open space plan outlined at that point in time. Yeah.
I just want to know what you're going to do about the invasives. I'm really getting tired of invasives. I see them everywhere.
Well, if you
drive down the road, just invasives all over the trees, over the bushes and everything, and it's time to do something about it.
Right.
But I don't know what you can educate people on how to remove them, right? Which you have in the past.
Well, there is that. There is some amusing thing like eating them.
Eating them.
Yes, it happens with the crabs that are
eat the invasives.
Eating the invasive, yes, that's something that's going on. I don't know. It's actually a pretty controversial topic because beating the invasive seems something challenging, if possible. What's the point? But suddenly fight them. I mean, the phragmites are everywhere, as you can tell, and more and more. I don't think you can consider getting rid of them today. But it is a delicate topic, and I guess adapt, I would say, is the best way.
Tim, are you including us as invasives?
On an evolutionary scale, I mean, anything's, it's a matter of perspective, right? I mean, if you're given enough time, the newest thing there is the invasive, usually, right?
Well, for Halloween, I was an invasive species. That was my costume, for real. So,
any other questions or comments?
That's pretty scary. That's all I want to say.
All right. Well, thank you, Jean-Sébastien, very much. for your presentation tonight. And, please come up and identify yourself and turn on the green light on the microphone.
Lisa Yankowski, I'm with the NRCC. And I just, because I know the minutes are going to be posted, we were asked to work with the library, and we will be hosting Ethan Tapper on December 5th here at the library.
Yep.
He will be doing a reading and we'll be introducing his book, How to Love a Forest.
What time is that?
6:30 p.m. And there's going to be a lot of information coming out. It'll be out on social media, but I thought since we were here before the city council, I'd put a splurb in.
And do you have a Facebook handle that you post stuff?
Not really.
No? Okay.
No.
Energy Committee is really good at that, so just a comment, that's all.
Yeah.
We have a question from the online audience. Ryan has his camera on.
It's Tim. Ryan Doyle, Brookwood neighborhood. Yeah, I love your comment, Tim. Invasives are something I'm really concerned with. It's why I go to most of the NRCC meetings. And I think I hear a lot of the concerns that the NRCC members have regarding projects at the DRB level. Like Jesse says, it goes back to the policies we have in place, and there being sort of an educational delay there, just like we have with a lack of standards for safer walking and cycling in our infrastructure. The same thing goes into the environment, where some places have started to do these things, but we're really quite far behind in Vermont in incorporating those into our codes at the municipal level, in part because we have such small municipalities. So again, I do want to take that back to you guys as the counselors and say that we really need the encouragement from you all and the willingness to back up that kind of research and filling in those gaps so that those respective committees can work collaboratively to fill those gaps and bring that information to the Planning Commission and to you guys so that we can see more long-term improvements and not feel like we are constantly tripping when we see a new project come in. You'll note that on the blue column here, most of the way down it says, consider regulatory or incentive changes to limit chipping during construction. The NRCC did spend about a year working on something for related to this for the LDRs. And it's been a pretty long process, but I know that there's more that can go into that would also address invasive species coming back, because once you clear land, invasives tend to take hold much quicker, right? That's how we see forests full of European buckthorn, right? So there are other things you could add to this list for sure. It's one of the shortest lists that I've seen from the other committees, and I think it would be really nice to see a buildup of more regulations that help with this topic.
Thank you, Ryan. Well, if there are no more questions, thank you for your plan.
Thank you
very much. And now I know it's European invasives. I suspected that all along.
Eurasian, yeah.
But wait a second, but we were European invasives, so okay. We're back to it comes full circle all the time.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just read something about a white clam now from elsewhere that's invaded the lake.
And it's not a quahog, huh? Darn it. We can't eat those cherry stones on the half shell with some horseradish? Darn it.
You can eat lake clams if you want to, but only if you need to, I think.
Maybe just cook them. So we've been given these plans from Bike and Ped, Economic Development, Energy and Natural Resources and Conservation. Would the council like to have a motion to accept these plans right now?
I move to accept the
I would
plans
second.
from Bike Pen, Economic Development, Energy, and Natural Resources and Conservation.
I would second the motion.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? I'll just say I appreciate the work that they put in. I appreciate the work they put in every time they meet and other times, and also for these plans as well. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. It's approved. Thank you very much. And we'll now move on to,
Thank you all.
you're welcome. Thanks for coming. Item 9, which is receive and consider approving resolution 2024-24 establishing a housing committee in place of the previously convened Affordable Housing Committee and Housing Trust Fund Committee, and presenting is Kelsey Peterson, the Senior City Planner. Good evening.
Hello. Yeah, so as some of you may know, first of all, there's two impetuses behind this. First is the Affordable Housing Committee had been talking for a while, for several months over the winter, about whether it made sense for the Housing Trust Fund Committee that currently meets as required to be folded into a single committee. Subsequently to that, and before that discussion could be moved any farther forward, the membership of the Affordable Housing Committee has been significantly reduced and hasn't been able to be filled. It's supposed to be a 10-member committee. There's currently 4 or 5 people on it, depending on how you count it. So there's a couple of sort of logistical things going into this, and then the other that's more of a policy-driven approach is the Affordable Housing Committee has felt that being the Affordable Housing Committee has been limiting, especially when South Burlington and Vermont, Chittenden County and Vermont have all been dealing with a housing crisis for several years, and in hindsight, probably for decades. Looking to expand the mandate of the Affordable Housing Committee into a housing committee by both folding in the Housing Trust Fund Committee and expanding the focus of policy advising from the sort of capital A affordable to people who are under the average median area income, things like that, to a much broader spectrum of encouraging housing. How do we get more housing? How do we encourage higher quality housing? How do we have housing that meets other city goals for transportation or climate change mitigation or open park space, community building and vitality? How do we take all of those things and have a committee that's dealing with all of the spiders and tendrils of housing in the community? So in the last couple of months, I have first attempted to get a quorum of the Affordable Housing Committee, which didn't work. But then second, the approach was to convene a few members, less than a quorum, of the Affordable Housing Committee, and Larry Kupferman, who's here in the audience from the Housing Trust Fund Committee, with Councilor Fitzgerald, to discuss what would a charge for a housing committee look like. So from that conversation with that group of, it was 5 people, from that conversation, I built the resolution that is in your packet, and then getting a little more feedback, a little bit of an iterative process with people that were in that conversation, added a few additional words, tweaked a little bit of language, added a little bit of more focus on climate, and meeting some of our other housing goals. We ended up at the resolution that you have now, and I'm happy if Councilor Fitzgerald has anything she wants to add about how that process went, or Larry's in the audience here, and Vince Bolduc is online. He was also part of this process. So if any of you 3 wanted to add to that, I'd be happy to, and otherwise I'd be happy to take questions from the council.
Elizabeth?
No, I thought that was a great synopsis, Kelsey, and it was a lot of work kind of going into understanding that maybe the mission of the combined groups has sort of evolved over time.
Yeah.
And in light of really, as you described it, sort of a burgeoning housing crisis across the state, to really go beyond what the Affordable Housing Group was looking at exclusively, and then the occasional interim demand for the Housing Trust Group, because there is expertise and interest on a larger part. And then the issue with a quorum was really partly the size of the committee as well.
Yeah,
So
the-
there's a shared interest now across the two groups and an expanded scope to move forward.
Yeah, and just something that we know from the planning and zoning side that we hear from developers is that they are able to either build very high-end housing, very expensive housing, and make that work for them financially, and they're able to build highly subsidized housing that gets a lot of federal money or something else that supports it, but then is limited to very low-income people. And there's a huge gap in between those two things. And if South Burlington is pushing towards and continuing to want to develop into a more economically diverse community that has more vitality, more energy, people who live here can work here and vice versa, expanding the mandate felt critical. I think Vince has his hand up online.
Mike, did you want to make a comment first? Okay, so Vince Bolduc is online. Vince? Do you want to say something?
Thank you. I just wanted to support the case that Kelsey made and that Elizabeth just alluded to. We've kind of outgrown the affordability aspect of it. It's still a major focus, as you'll see in the resolution that I think she'll share with you. But it's a much broader issue. It gives us a little more freedom to pull in other things and interest more people and address the broader community in some more significant ways. So I support this completely.
Thank you, Vince. Mike?
Just two questions, I guess. One's clarification. It's great that you, I think, have listed these different categories, underscoring this sort of all aspects of what's in the middle, all components of it. But I guess I was just thrown a little bit by the word investment in safe housing. I would assume that all housing that we would support and develop would be safe by definition. So I'm just trying to understand that word. And
So,
the second, I'll just ask you both so you can then. And the other is when we talk about housing, a lot of the housing that is going up is often rental or lease. And if we're talking about your energy, you're talking about young, energetic people. I don't think you're talking to us directly, but we're encouraging those kind of people to come here. Part of that is going to be about equity, being able to buy into it. So
Absolutely.
Is that just assume that this will be worked into this process and this will be one of the objectives of how to achieve housing that can be bought at a level in these categories you've defined? Or is this really just accepting that rental and leasing is sort of the objective? Does that need to be, I guess, defined or not in this?
I don't think it needs to be defined. I think it is included in the economically diverse piece of it. I would say that making sure that housing is accessible to all price points in the city is a major goal. But if this is a policy decision that the committee could make or could advise the council on, if advocating for changing the regulations about how much ownership housing there has to be in inclusionary, or educating the public on condominium financing or whatever it might be, there's always opportunities for that. The idea for the resolution was to be a perennial resolution that lasts and is effective for many years. So I think you have to read the resolution of setting the charge for the committee in context of the city plan. And read together, I think you can get to exactly what you want. And then about the safe housing question, that was a word that was actually one of those words that I said was added through this iterative process from some comments that I got from the people involved. The idea was, I think it goes hand in hand with the rental registry idea or the new rental registry, that our housing in South Burlington is inspected, is monitored, not just at the construction phase, but later down the road. When these new buildings are 50 years old, making sure that the city is taking responsibility for making sure that things stay up to modern code and stay up to safety and all of those things. So that's why that one word was added. It's the same motivation as the rental registry.
Close out on that. Thank you very much. And I would hope that when the committee is created, that I think just emphasizing the ability that a part of the mission statement is creating housing or helping people buy housing is I think just in so critical, though obviously we're a mix of both. But I'm afraid it will eventually be just permanently rental leasing as if we keep going with the trend we're going on. On the safe housing, does that mean that we have committed now to a regulatory process that will be part of, again, a regulatory process? Because you're saying 30 years, 50 years, maintaining the house meets safety standards. This is a commitment for the housing role to have a role in this sort of regulatory process?
I don't think it's specifically that the housing committee would have a role in the regulatory process, but that that is kind of the vision for housing in the community. And I think that's where the city has already gone with the rental registry and the inspection program that has been put in place in the last year or so.
And just to add to that, the Affordable Housing Committee was quite involved with the development of the rental registry ordinance.
Yep.
And I would imagine when we do a review of that in the future, that this committee would want to help advise you all on those changes as well.
But not the regular. I was just going
Not the regulatory, just the
earlier
policy.
point. I just wanted to make sure we're still staying in the lanes.
Mhm.
Well, I think.
Thank you.
I just wanted to also add regarding safety, we don't currently have building inspections for single-family homes. And where often that's not a problem, it's not always not a problem. And I think including safety in here is important from that regard, so that when people are buying homes in South Burlington, they know that they're buying a home that is actually going to be safe and durable for them.
Andrew?
So I want to agree with Mike, and I'm just wondering whether we should tweak these words to put a little thumb on the scale for ownership, and particularly condominiums in city center, because there's an awful lot of rental buildings and a real scarcity of new condo units being built. So maybe these words, are good enough, but I'd just like to make that point that I really agree that should be a focus of how do we help move the housing stock in that direction. The second thing is that, and it's maybe, sometimes not recognized, but it would be good to also, I think, construct some less affordable condominiums, because that would allow folks who currently have single-family homes that may be older, that would love to stay in South Burlington and want to move somewhere that's less onerous for them to upkeep, maintain, right, into that kind of location, and then free up some other home somewhere else for a family. So I think it's not just really about the missing middle and workforce, but it's really a spectrum, right, to lubricate the market a bit. And I just want to make sure that that's also something that we think about.
That's a good point. If I understand what you're saying, then your second point is to help facilitate the normal sort of churn that happens as people go through their life, and to make those, that makes a lot of sense.
Yep. So I would say that I would, as I mentioned before, we have a resolution that's setting up a committee that's intended to be perennial, and a lot of the issues that you're raising are good ones and are policy decisions. But those are things that are much, in my opinion, are more appropriate and more effective to be in a document like the city plan or the annual policy priorities, that then this committee, that maybe this resolution will stand for 20 years. We don't know. Probably not, but it might. But every year you have the opportunity to direct policy and direct what discussions are being had. Is it condominium discussions? Is it ownership discussions? Is it duplex discussions? Is it, what is it? But to keep the resolution in the right principles and expanding on or addressing the correct principles that you want the committee to be involved in, while allowing space for those policy discussions to change over time, and reading those documents, the resolution with the city plan and policy priorities and budgeting and everything else that you're doing is how you keep it alive from year to year.
Your annual work plans could be reflective of
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, and just switching gears from the last handful of presentations that you had, this is establishing a new committee that then would have a work plan. And these items can all be on a work plan, but this is not the work plan. So I think it's two different documents.
Larry, did you have some comments? Come up and identify yourself. Green light, microphone.
green light is on. Larry Kupferman, and I have been serving as the chair of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund from the beginning. Just a little bit, I'm glad you mentioned the policy, because one policy that I think the new committee would need to look at is the use of the money. The city has a sizable balance. Through the ARPA process, there were a number of projects, I think, in anticipation of using some of this money, all around affordable. Home ownership might be part of that, maybe if Habitat has some say in some of that development, but they're primarily rental units. The question of private developers versus nonprofits, all of those things really need to be worked out, and we have to certainly understand what they are now and if there are any changes to those policies to bring them forward. And I certainly support this whole effort, because I think consolidation and focusing on housing is the right way to go. So thanks.
Thank you. Is there interest in reading the resolution? Do you want me to rip through that pretty quick for the public to hear? Is that okay? Okay, so go ahead. Vince wants to say something? Vince?
Yeah, I was just going to read one of the points of the resolution that kind of underscores the recommendations coming from council here. And that one is this. It is about housing. It's not about houses, of course. The resolution contains this: advising the city on potential policies, programs, and regulatory updates to promote, encourage, and incentivize investment in safe housing, right, including affordable housing, workforce housing, and housing affordable to middle-income residents to foster an economically diverse, climate equitable community. So I think that's pretty broad and kind of addresses some of the concerns that I think were just raised.
Thank you, Vince. So I'll just go down to the resolved parts of the resolution: that the City Council dissolves the Affordable Housing Committee and Housing Trust Fund Committee, and then further resolves that from this point forward, until amended in the future, the composition of the South Burlington Housing Committee shall include 7 members appointed by the City Council for rotating 3-year terms. So that's the action in that resolution. So can I have a motion to?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
A second.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All those. Wait, Roseanne is waving her arms. Hi, Roseanne.
Yes, I put something in the chat, and I don't know how to get your attention. So I got your attention. I hope you don't give up on affordable housing. I mean, it sounds as if it was so hard to do that we just abandoned the effort to get affordable housing. I mean, years past, the definition of affordable changed so that the words say affordable, but it's really what people make, and what they can afford. I mean, that's a dollar amount. So I really encourage you to actually put a dollar amount to it, tied to the mean and income. And so otherwise, I'm just concerned that we're going to end up with the same kind of houses that are being built now, starting in the 600,000 and up. That is not affordable to regular Vermonters. And I just think this sounds to me like the city is abandoning the effort to get housing that regular Vermonters can afford. Anyway, I know it's unpopular, but that's how it strikes me. And, we've talked about this many, many times in many years past, that we're turning into a city of the very affluent and the very poor, but the regular Vermonters are not able to live here. So.
Thank you, Roseanne. And I think that one of the therefores that Vince described, it really tries to focus on affordable housing, but also then workforce housing and housing affordable to middle-income residents, as it says. So they're expanding their perspective and scope of the kind of work they would do. and get it down to 7 members and
Yeah, the
and
current
include the
definition
trust.
of affordable housing is a cost of up to 30% of 30% of 80% of the area median income. So it's for a person who makes under average income, 30% of their income going to housing. That's a very important group of people. It's a very necessary group of people to be advocating for, but it is a limiting group of people. Then we're talking about people who are at 100%, so truly the average person in our area being able to afford something that's above that price point. So just expanding from a little bit from the sort of more federal definition of 30% of 80% and just being a little bit more holistic up to the 100%, even 120% of average area median income gets us to more of that core, not abandoning the lowest, but from 0 up to about 120 is how we had been discussing it as capturing more of that middle spectrum.
And I'll just say that, I mean, the bulk of the housing that's been built in the last couple of years has not been single-family homes.
Correct.
It's been units.
Correct.
Like right down the street.
The vast majority.
Yeah. Last comment before the vote?
I just had a quick one I wanted to share, which is when I first read this agenda item, I had the same concerns that Roseanne brought up. And reading the resolution, I think that it makes a lot of sense, and it is not, quote, giving up on affordable, but it's expanding the mission to really address housing concerns writ large. So I'm in favor.
Definitely in favor. Just questions in terms of setting it up, what's the next step in terms of the process of identifying the 7, and also to, I think, what Tim said is using the work plan to start putting some of these ideas out there, so the signal is being sent as soon as possible to the developers, to the nonprofits, and to our community that this is truly a priority for us.
Yeah, so I would say that the people who are currently on the Affordable Housing Committee and the 2 people who are currently on the Housing Trust Fund Committee have all expressed interest in remaining on the Consolidated Committee, and that actually does get you to the 7. So I don't know procedurally if you could reappoint those people or if they would have to technically apply, but you could fill the committee with the people who have been appointed to the 2 bodies that are being consolidated and end up with a very robust group of people.
Once you approve this resolution, I recommend that I bring that action back to you on the next meeting's consent agenda.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kelsey.
And item number 10, receive and consider approving a common roots request for city funds in the amount of $156,000 to fund the purchase of 3 additional Rimol greenhouses at South Village, and I probably didn't pronounce that correctly, but RIMOL. And we have Robin Jeffers and Carol McQuillan, and I don't know your name, sir. I'm sorry.
This is Colin O'Brien. He's
Colin
a
O'Brien.
farmer.
Oh, you're a farmer. Okay.
Common Roots farmer.
Good evening.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for having us.
The green light on your touch the base of your microphone until the green light comes on. Just touch it once. Talk now.
Talk now.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
There you go.
That's a difference. Thanks for having us. So we are here representing Common Roots. Just briefly, Common Roots is a 501c3 charitable organization that's located here in South Burlington. They focus primarily on food equity, nutrition education, and local organic farming. And essentially, the greatest focus of those things is food equity. And we define food equity as a system where everyone in the community has knowledge, choice, and opportunity to have access to healthy, fresh, local food. And how Common Roots brings that all together, they provide knowledge. So Common Roots is in our school system, all the elementary grades from kindergarten through 5th grade. Every kid in school in those grades gets a nutrition lesson once a month. So that's 73 lessons a month that Common Roots is delivering in our elementary schools. And they're all hands-on lessons made interesting with tasting, which makes it fun for the kids. And that learning actually spreads out through the community from those kids to all those kids' families and the teachers and their families, et cetera. We also have about 60 interns a year, high school and college age kids from the community who are also learning all about what Common Roots is all about, supporting its programs, learning life skills, and learning community service in service to food equity. Opportunity. So opportunity, according to one's means, is additionally how we describe food equity, and Common Roots provides opportunity through providing food from our farm to our retail farm stand and to the South Burlington food shelf. And because of the dichotomy of retail and free, that is how we address according to one's needs in our community. And then choice. We provide the same choice in our retail food farm stand that we do at the food shelf. We don't bring day old or anything like that to the food shelf. It's the exact same harvest that's supplied to both at the same time. So we feel very, very strongly about that. And that's why we are wanting to grow. Just a little bit of history. Common Roots started the South Burlington Food Shelf in 2009 and ran it for 10 years until 2019 when the Faith, I always screw this up, the Faith Influenced Leadership took over in 2019 with Common Roots as a key partner and expanded to the location where they are now. They are open 3 days a week, and Common Roots brings food 3 days a week, fresh fruit each day, with a nutritionist to man the farm stand, to give nutrition advice to anybody who wants it at the farm stand. But visitors are limited to bi-weekly visits to the farm stand. So that's something that we are hoping to be able to alleviate by this request.
Bi-monthly. Bi-monthly. Twice a month they can come. That, you said bi-weekly.
Bi-weekly, it's twice a month. I stand corrected. Twice a month. We see the need for more food. It's been growing annually, and since the pandemic, it has really jumped up huge. I believe we're up at over 400 families a week currently. The greenhouses would allow us to expand our growing season. We'd be able to start earlier. We'd be able to produce later in the year, and Collins told us we could even be able to overwinter crops so that we'd be able to have some fresh food year-round. We think that's pretty exciting. That would be a big jump from where we are now. We also need to mitigate the weather conditions that are affecting us. I think everybody has seen in the news, but rain, wind, floods, fires. There are even fires right now burning in the Northeast, which is something that we've never seen before. So greenhouses would allow us to have a little bit of control over the weather. Certainly with irrigation, we can control the sun, we can control wind, we can heat, we can cool, and all those things would allow us to have better control over crops and our production. Colin has been testing the same crops growing inside in the greenhouses that we do have and outside, and has found that greenhouse growing is much superior as far as the crops and the products and the yields that we get. In the bigger picture, nationally, we know that our food distribution system is very brittle. The pandemic showed us that. And we very strongly believe that a local farm economy is needed for communities to be resilient. And Common Roots, to grow their production, would do that. Common Roots is the only farm in South Burlington growing produce. There is one other farm, Belcher's Dairy, and Bread and Butter Farm in Shelburne grazes cattle in South Burlington land. But Common Roots is the only person actually growing food and distributing it in our community. In our state's identified the Vermont Food Security Roadmap to address this need that they see happening nationally with the brittle food system. And that goal is to see that every Vermonter would have an adequate supply of food by 2035. We're not currently there. Currently, Vermont farms are disappearing at a rate of 15 to 20% annually. So farms require support to be able to be sustainable, and the state plan directly encourages municipalities to support farms to be sustainable. We want to recognize the city has done a lot. Certainly, they've been a great partner to Common Roots, and yet we are asking for more. But Common Roots is, again, a nonprofit. It essentially has a few revenue-producing programs and a lot of charitable programs. Its revenue-producing programs produce about 50% of its budget. The balance of Common Roots' budget is fulfilled by donations from the community, whether it's from the municipality or private citizens or grants. That is how Common Roots survives. I think that about sums it up. I went on a lot more in the letter that I sent you. That is a shorter summary. Are there questions?
Sure, I have some questions. So is Rymol, is that a type of greenhouse or is it a specific manufacturer? Or?
It's a manufacturer, Rymol, yeah.
Okay.
And it's a Vermont company.
So back in 2020, just as the pandemic was getting started, I helped spread the plastic over one of those houses. Is that one of the ones that isn't?
No, that's different. So that's a hay grove. Thank you for your help, by the way. So those need to be taken down and put back up every season.
Oh, they do? Oh, right.
They are cheaper structures. I think those were about $15,000, and they were popular in Vermont for a while. However, they're not ideal. They became popular because they were inexpensive.
Right.
So we were looking for more permanent structures that would allow us to grow through the winter and more into each shoulder season.
And so just describe to me the challenges of growing inside versus outside.
Yeah. Well, Robin mentioned we've been doing some side-by-side comparisons of certain crops, and not every single crop wants to be in one of those houses. But this year we did some testing with eggplant. So we did, I think it was 100 feet indoors and 100 feet outdoors. And the indoor was far better. There are many factors, obviously, but one of the biggest ones was the rain that we received this summer. It really took a toll on it, and just the saturation that remained in those soils. We were seeing some root rot, and just everything was smaller. It took a longer time to produce. So, as we mentioned earlier, just being able to control moisture levels and irrigation within those tunnels really goes a long way, especially on the Common Roots clay soil.
Do these houses let rainwater in, or do you have to irrigate internally?
No, so we irrigate internally with a system that's drip tape. So it's these thin pieces of plastic that have small perforations, and it delivers the water right to the root system. So instead of having an overhead, broadcasting irrigation system where a lot evaporates and a lot runs off and stuff, this is precise.
It's a more precise delivery.
Yes.
Okay, I see. Yes, Andrew?
So just in terms of timing in the plan, so would the thought be to add all three at one shot, or maybe to take down the two smaller older ones, replace it next year with a new one, and then the following year? Or what's the thought about the rollout?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would be overwhelming to do all three at once, especially for me. It takes a lot of coordinating all these things. You need to have the site work done. Think about your irrigation, how you're going to plan to get water in there and stone and all sorts of other things. So I would say it would be over the course of a few years.
And presumably, take down the two older ones first,
Yeah, that was one of our thoughts. That was one of the potential locations for one of them, because you've seen they're old and ratty. And I kind of actually thought about redoing those ones and connecting those two and getting bows in between them, and then taking down the the plywood siding and doing nice polycarbonate, which might be more cost effective than taking them down and putting up a whole new one.
So to add to Andrew's question, are you looking for the $156,000 all in one lump sum, or are you looking for it to be provided to you by the city over a year or two or three?
That's a good question. I think we would be open to having it come as we put them up.
Makes a big difference in the consideration for our budgeting.
So if we were to allocate, say, 52 today for one, would that kind of put you on a good path?
Certainly.
Elizabeth?
What's the life expectancy of one of these greenhouses?
Yeah, good question. So different parts need to be replaced at different times. The bows, as long as they don't take any crazy tractor damage or something like that, they'll be fine forever. However, you have those polycarbonate end walls. Those have a lifespan of about 15 years. You have the plastic, which, if you take care of it and tighten it as you're supposed to, anywhere from 5 to 10 years, whereas the hay groves are about 3 years. And then the baseboards along the sides, you can't use any pressure-treated wood for the organic certification. So we usually try to have them above the ground a little bit, and those will, depending on how much moisture stays in there, those need to be replaced as well. But
And how did you fare last August when we had a pretty major windstorm?
Last August was fine. This August...
this August.
Yeah, this August...
First week in August on a Friday, there was a really bad.
Yeah. We have a new rim-all hoop house that we constructed last October. That did perfectly fine. However, on the hay groves, those have billow ropes that go over. One of the ropes snapped, and some of the plastic was destroyed, repurposed. Tarps now.
Mike?
In terms of, you suggested that this has higher production value, better quality. Have you done calculations on when do you get to a sort of a break-even point? And looking in the notes that you shared with us, thank you very much for the details. And I'd like that a lot of the inputs that you have are set at $1 or whatever, but with a time frame in which that will either be revisited, changed, or whatever. So in terms of getting towards a sustainable model, what have been the numbers that you've run on the value added of each one of these greenhouses?
It's tricky to say when we'd break even. I know a lot of farms will get grants or help with funding these because they're very expensive. But just to speak about the increase in production that we've seen this year in the one tunnel that we do have, we had, our tomato production last year was spread out into 3 houses. So there's 2 tiny houses and 1 hay grove. And we ended up with, 2,827 pounds of tomatoes. However, this year we had them just in that one house, this one bigger house, and had a difference of 1,200 pounds. So I don't have all of our pricing there, but we could calculate the numbers. But yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know exactly how long it would take us to break even there.
Go ahead.
Yeah. This is probably more a question for Robin or Carol, but I think, you folks have done incredible work over the years, and your mission's evolved, and I know you serve a lot of the community. I know you came in front of council before with a more substantial ask for a different project, and you're here now. I expect you may be here in the future again. What I don't really understand is really the partnership the city has with Common Roots, and is that a strategic partnership? And what else, if that serves certain goals, are there other partnerships the city should be looking at? Like you've mentioned bread and butter, and you've mentioned the dairy farm. I guess I don't understand the big picture, and this feels to me like it's been sort of a subsidized effort that's evolved, and I'm looking at sort of various agreements between Hubbard, Wheeler, the outdoor kitchen, and each of these has sort of a 10 to 25 year lifetime to it. I'm trying to get an idea of sort of what's the big picture and what's the mutual commitment that is being asked for and that the city needs to consider making on behalf of the community that might get to sustainable over time.
So first of all, if you look at other school districts in the area.
Identify yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Carol McQuillan with Common Roots. Thank you. If you look at comparable districts, Essex, Winooski, Burlington, Shelburne, there is no other school district that has a lesson a month, certainly not for 17 years for their children. And the concept of starting Common Roots is that we understood that our children are graduating from high school literally not understanding the difference between feeding yourself and nourishing yourself. And so when we look at if you want to look at costs, look at the cost of our health care. And to be raising children that graduate and don't know how to make a stir fry and where does nourishing food come from is probably a very big missing piece in our educational system. So that was one of the beginning premises. And then the second one was of beginning Common Roots is that we didn't want to be teaching food in schools that some children wouldn't have access to. So the very first thing we did was we began growing food, and all those families for our first 12 years were all identified by school social workers. And in the very beginning days, we paid farmers to help us grow the food because we didn't have the experience. So our sustainability is in plan. We're halfway sustainable of our programs and through our enterprises, and we've got a ways to go in terms of the needs of the community. Does that help? So the Wheeler house was empty. It was a mouse house just 8 years ago. And when a very bright woman on a foundation that's been generous to Common Roots said, "We love what you're doing, but you're giving everything away. Common Roots has got to become sustainable." And I knew she was right. And that next month, the city council the managers charged the city council with finding someone for the Wheeler house. So we literally spent almost 2 years upping that house. So it was a mouse house. The whole stairway and everything was gray and dull and mousy and old. And so we put about $120,000 of investment into the Wheeler house. We take nice care of it with the city's help, of course, in terms of the big infrastructure. And then when we had a 10-year lease before the outdoor kitchen. When the city gave us permission to build the outdoor kitchen, we had the understanding that our investment, which was only $70,000 to build it, but then the electricity was $27,000 to bring it, to up the electricity of the house and to bring it outside and for events was $27,000. So we're about a third of the way of receiving that money back. And when we receive the 97, then you're going to get 40% of every land rental, whether it's in the house or outside, it doesn't matter. And then according to the plan in discussion of that lease is that would help the city take care of Hubbard, which the city has done an amazing job. By the way, speaking earlier of invasive species, so Wheeler Homestead is 120 acres, but where all the grass is now for events in the dog park, that was fully invasive species. So the city did an amazing amount of work as you were talking invasives. That was quite a ratty mess. Then in terms of Hubbard, with the SUSAG committee studying agriculture, we were on that committee with 3 people for 2 years, and we literally Google Earthed it and walked it We walked the Hubbard Park in all the seasons. That soil is literally better than some of the soil at the farm at South Village. The challenge is some of the sloping in terms of keeping your cover crop nutrients in place because of the runoff. It's a very wet spot just even to the east of us that runs down. So it's not a fully developed site yet, and yet it is some of our better soil. And Colin knows exactly what he's going to plant there next year based on his 3 full years with us. Does that help you about the leases? So when we did the outdoor kitchen, the city gave us a 25-year lease instead of a 10. Our lease for the Wheeler House, including the outdoor kitchen, is up in 2041. And so our goal is to build the, I'm going to say, the mission and deepen the vision of Common Roots for the community at large. And one example that I'd like to share connects with our climate change. So one of the things, because of Colin and our really good for seasonal workers this year, last year when the Intervale flooded, Colin used to farm at the Intervale at Pitchfork. He was there 3 years before Common Roots, and he went down and helped clean it up. He goes, Carol, we got to grow more food, and I'm like, go for it. So he grew an extra 4,000 pounds that were gleaned by the Vermont Food Bank and for the Intervale. This year, with the same repeated flooding, Colin estimates that it will be doubled. We'll have given an extra 8,000 pounds to the Vermont Food Bank and to the Intervale Food Hub. That is farm resilience, and our partnerships with the other farms that are working together, Bread and Butter in particular, Sisters of Anarchy, we've been helping each other out for about 10 or 15 years, depending on the farm. So if you look ahead, it's bigger than our programs, it's bigger than the food we're growing. We want to leave into the future a dynamic, viable food system, not independent of Common Roots' 2 small urban farms with the city, but in perpetuity in collaboration with the other farms, especially in light that no one knows the full future of the Intervale. So to have a city with, and then the secret that I'll tell everybody, when we're growing food at your Hubbard Park and the farm at South Village, we're on 280 acres with no chemicals. So whether you rent or own at the farm at South Village, you make an agreement that you do not use exterior chemicals, and their property management company upholds that. And then your city standards is that on your 60 acres of Hubbard Park, there are no chemicals. And we hold 2 organic certifications on both farms. So you put that together, we can have a building capacity to grow the cleanest, healthiest food, nutrient dense, to teach it in our schools and have it available for the most vulnerable in South Burlington and then beyond. We have a commitment to 3 food shelves. And there are 3 other cities that would like us to do that, and we're not at that capacity. So we're very smart. We know when we can't say yes. So does that help you?
Well, yeah, I mean, it begs a few more questions, but one, does the district contribute from an educational standpoint? Do you have a similar ask?
They do not. They never have. And it's the reason there's no food education in Essex Junction. Used to have a full-time food educator. Burlington's down to a half-time in like 7 schools. And the challenge of it is it's not in our curriculum. And so when they are looking at all their budget cutbacks, something that isn't mandatory is the first to go. So while we have a relationship and a collaboration with the schools, there is $0 in any school budget in any of the 17 years.
Yeah, I guess I would go back to, not to belabor the point, but I do feel like there's a gap between the length of the leases, the services the city's providing, and the leases are $1 a year. The city is providing a fairly substantial amount of services between water, sewer, plowing, landscaping, some maintenance. It sounds like there's going to be about $500,000 over the next 10 years required at Wheeler House. It sounds like revenues are not coming back to the city yet. A great service is being provided, but there's no metrics also within the city plan, for instance, of, the city will partner with Common Roots to provide 50% of the produce needs within the school system, or something that can be articulated back to the community as a value add of a mutual venture. So that's where I'm struggling a little bit is what's coming across to me is a little bit of the one-off asks and sort of where it ties back to a city initiative that is on behalf of the entire community.
I have a question. Let's take last summer, right? So what percentage of your total yield went to the food shelf versus was actually sold?
Roughly a third.
It's a third. It's about a third to our programs. The rough estimates is a third is for programs, including the food shelves.
Yeah.
And a third to the, a third to the programs, not the food shelf, about a third to the food shelf, and a third to the retail.
What was the third thing?
The retail shop of the
so retail, the program, and the food
and
shelf.
the food shelves.
So if you want to increase your yields by 40%, I think it said in your memo, right? So then, how would those percentages change, or it would be the same third, or are you looking to boost a particular part of that?
Well, all the programs have capacity to deepen and get wider. So the programs, we hold the programs to what they are now because it's what we can afford. Okay. So the program aspect of it is the other schools local schools that would love us to be teaching in their schools would be part of that. And then there's opportunities in the high school that we haven't developed yet. So other than their internships with us, we need more development in the high school around food education.
So if the school commitment stays the same for now and you increased your yields, let's say 30% next year, what would you do with the extra food? Would it go to the food bank or food shelf or retail? Did you sell everything that you grew last year that went to retail?
We had very little waste, and we do, it is kind of nice having all these different outlets where, if something doesn't sell and it will move in the food shelf immediately. And I think that one of the goals with this 40% increase would be to supply more to the food shelf as well, keeping it about a third, and maybe even getting rid of some of the limitations that these families have in the food shelf going, twice a month.
Yeah, for 12 years, families could come every week and get food with Common Roots, and because of the growth of the number of people coming to our food shelf, they've changed the opportunity to only twice a month. You can help people twice a month, but the impact comes that at the end of the month, because food has been supported for them on a deeper level, that they have more money to pay their mortgage, their rent, their other expenses. So I'm not a proponent of the twice a month at the food shelf. So I believe that even if there wasn't enough food in all the other shelves, if our farms could provide more food, that people at least could come for their fresh produce, because otherwise, if they try to take what they can use in 2 weeks, some of that will not be very fresh. So it's a challenge. There's lots to think about there.
So what's the council's pleasure?
Can I?
Oh, go ahead.
May I add a few comments?
Sure.
Thank you. To answer Elizabeth's questions, I would have said that we're your food equity partner. If it were not for Common Roots, food equity would not be met in the city. If Common Roots goes away, food equity will not be met in the city, and the nutrition education would also disappear.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Robin. I just don't know what the alternatives are or would be from that standpoint.
Well, being that Common Roots is a nonprofit, and its budget is currently self-sustaining only at 50%. It's gonna take a while to get up to where they're fully sustainable, which is their goal. But if a similar nonprofit were to show up, they probably would be in the same position. But I'm not even sure that that would happen. I mean, Common Roots is here, honestly, because of Carol McQuillan and her being in the school system and recognizing the need of students going hungry, students being poorly nourished, not being able to study, not being able to pay attention to their lessons, not being able to sit still. I'm going to get emotional. Usually Carol gets emotional, but I'm going to get emotional.
I hope you're not taking this as criticism. I'm really just asking, is there or should there be a strategic, formal relationship between city and Common Roots and potentially other relationships where there may be gaps in terms of nutrition for our community members? And I guess a fundamental question is, why wouldn't the district be participating in this as well? Those are my honest questions.
Sure.
So.
Well, I think they're great questions. We did note a couple of mistakes in the memorandum that went out, and I just wanted to clear those up. Under item number 1, lease agreements, the 4th bullet, it says that the city caused a well to be drilled at its sole expense, and Common Roots actually paid for that. Common Roots had the well drilled. Common Roots paid for the well pump and all the excavation and the conduit for the
clarification that might help, it's Carol again, is that while we had excavated for the well and the drilling, this when we had the excavation done, the city put in, because of the Hubbard Park plan at the time, the city did put in the electricity, but we paid for the well, all of the well and the excavation.
And then I wanted to add that Common Roots has invested over $120,000 in improvements at Wheeler House, which included all of the woodwork refinishing of the floors, the staircase, the built-in cabinetry, new toilets, floors of the labs, and put in a commercial kitchen. They also do maintain all of the cleaning, the painting, and the regular day-to-day maintenance. That's all I was going to add.
We can. Hold on. Did you have something quick?
I just wanted to say that, in my opinion, Common Roots is a model organization for our community, and it's providing a service that, as we move into the future, is going to become more and more important for all of our residents. Food insecurity on a global level is going to become a much bigger issue as climate events become more severe. And the more we can provide a resilient local food source for our community, the more resilient we will be. And that Common Roots is giving away 60% of the produce that they create every year, going to our community, to our school, to our poorest residents. Farms aren't even surviving in our communities on their own, and without support from the city as well as other areas, the work that is critical for our survival isn't going to happen. And so I would like to see us propose funding for one of the greenhouses at this round, and I'm in full favor of supporting what I consider to be remarkable work and work that is critical to our future.
Thank you, Lori. Mike, can we go to the online folks? Barb, I see you have your camera on. Did you want to say something?
I did. Thanks, Tim. This is a tough one because I agree that this is a critical service that's provided to our community, but I also share the concerns that Elizabeth, pardon me, I should have called you Counselor Fitzgerald. The questions that she raised about whether or not we are making a huge investment. But I think I heard, and I could have heard it wrong, that we are providing food to food shelves outside of South Burlington. And if that's true, then again, it raises a question for me. And I am a full believer in collaboration and cooperation and helping the greater good. But if we are in fact using City of South Burlington funds, then I think the programs need to stay in South Burlington. And those other communities that could benefit from the work of Common Roots, then they need to be providing some support for those services as well. Okay. I came tonight thinking that I was going to say, nah, I can't support any of this. But as I listened to the conversation, I think I agree with one greenhouse, but without a commitment to the additional 2 greenhouses. I think that the council has been really good about asking other community agencies to provide data. And I think the same kind of data need to be provided before any consideration is made in the future for additional greenhouses. And I gather there probably is a lot of data in the materials that you have, but I haven't seen those. But I think that we've got some huge needs, and those needs are going to continue to grow. Food insecurity is one of them. You talked in the previous group about housing. That's another huge issue, and we only have so many dollars. And so how do we invest them wisely for the benefit of our South Burlington residents? So I would compromise in my earlier thoughts and say 1 greenhouse, but I think that they need to come back before there are any future requests and give you some really hard evidence about what was done, how much was the increase, where did those resources go. It's one thing if you're giving consultation and collaboration on ideas and thoughts and projects and processes, as opposed to if you are giving actual food grown in South Burlington to another community. And that sounds really selfish, but I also listened to what everything was said about the kids in our community who are food insecure, and I want to make sure that they remain our priority.
Thank you, Barb. Carol, do you want to respond to
I
that
wanted
question?
to address the other communities. So Common Roots is a land link farm. There are about 30 farms in the state of Vermont that are land link farms that grow heritage seed for the Abenaki people who own the land that we are all sitting on right now and standing on. And so that is a really unique opportunity. It's our 7th year of being a land link farm. And so we grow out the 7 heritage crops for the Abenaki people. And there are about 37 Abenaki food shelves in the state of Vermont. And so that is a very specific request as a land link farm. And so their heritage seeds are held kind of sacred, and then we bring crops to them, and they help support some of the planning of that. And then their seeds get measured and weighed, and they go into the Vermont Food Bank for the Abenaki, which is at NOFA in Richmond, Vermont. So that's a very unique food shelf that we're supporting. And then during the pandemic, the chef at then it was Feeding Chittenden, and now it's called Feeding Champlain Valley. What he liked about our produce is that it came triple washed and clean and ready to cut up and serve because they didn't have time to do all that extra prep with food. And so we just built a relationship with the chef, which is now at Feeding Chittenden, Feeding Champlain Valley. And so we don't have a full commitment like twice a week or 3 times a week like we do at our food shelf, but whenever we can, we bring them triple wash food by 6 in the morning, and they prep it right into their breakfasts and lunches. So it's not like we're supporting all of Feeding Chittenden food shelf. It's a very specific niche that we're able to fill for the chef that still keeps their breakfast and lunches in to-go containers because they learned during COVID they can serve more people.
Thank you. Roseanne Greco, did you want to make a comment?
Yes, I did. I totally support what Common Roots is asking for, and I really encourage the City Council to agree to it in toto, either agree to it in toto over 3 years or all at once. You heard a presentation a while back from the Energy Committee. And our Energy Committee is recognized, as you heard, not just locally, but beyond our local area, because they do astounding work. Common Roots is, I can't think of the words to say how terrific a job they have done with meager resources. Laurie, I agree with everything Laurie said. They are, and generous in all regards. And to support them, I think we'll let the city partner with them on the values that they are providing. There's another issue, and I only started learning about it during the Sustainable Agriculture Subcommittee work, and that is the serious problem we're going to have with nutritious food worldwide, nationwide. Our soils are becoming so degraded, they're not able to produce food with enough nutrients to sustain human beings. We are, and not to mention the plastics and the pollutants that we're putting in. We had a glimpse of what might happen during COVID when supplies were cut off. But even if supplies are coming, think of what's happening across the United States with droughts, floods, soil erosion, pollution. Your money, this is an investment in people's health, in the future of the people who live here and want to eat. I encourage you not to think dollars and cents and monetize this. What price do you put on good health? What price do you put on a healthy body with nutritious food? If we have the land in South Burlington to produce a lot of terrific food, I really encourage you to put all the resources you can into this. What is more important than clean air, clean water, and nutritious food? Those are those are the things we need, the elements of life. And we are so blessed to have an organization like Common Roots and soil on our lands that can produce this kind of food, which is why I've been fighting for 12 years to protect our soil. So I think long term, read about what's happening to our food. It's getting less and less nutritious, and that's making us sicker and sicker. All kinds of studies about this. So obviously I'm passionate about this. Please take the long view. Please use your dollars where it will do the greatest good for the greatest number of people for generations to come.
Thank you, Roseanne.
Thank you.
Ryan? And make it quick, Ryan, because we're running out of time here. We're behind schedule now.
Thanks, Tim. Ryan Doyle, Brookwood. So I think something that's really important here on their end is extending the growing season, really important. My research in college was on aeroponic controlled environment high-rise farming, and the ability to not just pay equitably for our farm laborers, where nationwide it's half of our farm labor is undocumented immigrants, but being able to provide good jobs to people to grow and produce year-round in Vermont is really important. So infrastructure that helps extend that growing season is really good in our security. That said, I really like the points that Elizabeth brought up in terms of how do we plan alongside the needs and concerns of this organization. And I don't know what possibilities that could look like, but we do have a Natural Resource and Conservation Commission subcommittee that was presenting to you today, and it seems like that would be the kind of place where some of these things get discussed, and perhaps even in the upcoming open space plan, that we really should be looking at what our relationship is with subsidized agriculture going into the future, and maybe doing some more of that that better planning and collaboration, and get it more set up so it's not so many different one-off type of agreements, but that it's a little bit more coordinated and more of a concerted effort between the city and this farming organization. It's a really cool organization. Really glad they support the food shelf. It's a big benefit to our community for sure. So figuring out how to make the best of that relationship that optimizes both sides and makes a win-win, I think would be really awesome for y'all to look into more. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Tim, can I have 30 more seconds?
30? How about 10?
Okay, I just want to say I am in support of this project, and I want to thank Carol for the explanation about the Abenaki, because that casts a whole different light on some of the things that are going on. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I think from listening to all the voices, I think it would be only right for us to ask for a more strategic plan over a period of time. I think that is not penalizing, this is helping, because I think nothing is worse than creating the hope of something, people becoming dependent upon that hope, and then it disappears. And so I think an incremental approach as what I think Barbara said easily, where perhaps maybe we make a decision on one, but in an expectation of going further, we see, and to the degree possible, help, whether it's through one of our committees, whether it's hope of due diligence from the staff, on how do we make a partnership. But we also have to set boundaries on the objectives, because if one tries to be everything to everybody, it ends up being nothing to anybody. I mean, and so I think if we can come to some sort of more strategic discussions on how we can see, and as I understand the two objectives I heard were schools, nutritional, and being sure that people in our community who do not have access to a food bank in our community, I can respect the relationship with the indigenous population, but we have to limit also our objectives. Otherwise, good intentions will unfortunately not lead us to where we want to go. And I think what Elizabeth was saying, and what I heard also Barbara was saying, is how do we help to make this permanent? I would even go one step forward. If someone's coming to the food shelter for 2, 3, 4 years to get their food, there's a problem. There needs to be another partnership in that relationship to help that people reach a position where they don't need to, because permanent food shelter as their only source of food suggests that there is something in that particular household that has not been able to help them integrate and become a part of the community in a social way that allows them to advance their things. So I would hope that we could have, find this sort of balance as we go forward, and see if we can make this a sustainable, comprehensive approach, but an approach where our responsibility, in the end of the day, I never forget my responsibility, fiduciary responsibility to the community. In the end of the day, it's not spending our money, it's spending our fellow residents' money. And I think they basically would expect, as good-willed as they are, there are going to be many competing demands. And I would almost suggest that we almost make this decision in the upcoming budget, which is just 12 days away, and say, we can then face the citizens and say, we looked at that, and that also gives you some time to get back to us with some additional information. And then if we do go forward on this, we can say, we can explain it as something that has legs, that is comprehensive, and that having looked at the trade-offs, we can say with good faith to all our fellow citizens, there's something in it here, and it's worth making an incremental commitment within a context of getting to a sustainable.
So, Mike, you're in favor of maybe thinking about one?
But I would say that decision within the context.
So Lori's proposal is
within the budget.
Remember, this is ARPA funds, right?
No, it's not.
It could be. We still have this bucket of ARPA money that's not fully.
I didn't know that. I was approaching this as part of our budget discussion, and this is why I reference talking about making this decision when we make our discussion at the retreat on the 12th.
and allowing us to do the due diligence, because at least as presented on our agenda, it's part of our budget discussion. That's where I saw the money coming from. ARPA money we already committed it to give it all to.
I don't think we have this, so go ahead and tell us.
Tell me, clarify it, because that was my understanding, is that we had voted on the ARPA money to go as a package towards.
We have some ARPA
So,
money.
okay.
All right, answer the question, Jessica.
So I did not, there's no funding source listed here. So you have a regular budget process, you have fund balance, you have, if you want to fund this with ARPA, you need to do it very, very quickly, and it would basically buy down the ARPA you have previously allocated to creating to the CIP to create your future fund balance. So it would take dollars out of that to put into this. Those are your options. Or
just to clarify that, right? We, I thought, decided that instead of having to very quickly determine how to contract for ARPA projects before the end of this year, we'd contract for other projects and take the ARPA dollars in a reserve, right, that we can spend in the future.
Right, that's what I just said. Like
Okay.
you have voted to put the remainder of the ARPA dollars that are not funded into the CIP projects to create a fund balance for yourself. But you still have until the end of December to allocate, so you still have that option. We will be coming back to you with other requests for that, just heads up.
So
Those are coming in December.
Right, and these will all come within the context of our 12 December retreat, where we'll be looking at all the challenges that are on us. You're going to be presenting the budget, right?
So the budget is the annual funding. You can use one-time funding in the budget, but the budget is really the annual operations budget. I mentioned earlier the finance system, the economic development consultant. Those two are things that you have previously said you would use ARPA funding for if we can get it under contract by the end of December. That is our focus right now, is to try and get those done. If you want to add this to that effort, you can do that.
Is there enough money for that?
That's the question.
Enough ARPA money?
Yeah.
I mean, are we doing a trade-off? So if we add to it, are we taking for something else? I mean, that's the simple
Well,
question.
you're taking away from your future selves that fund balance that created fund balance you have created.
So I'll be quick. I think we should take some of those ARPA dollars and allocate it for a hoop house. We can see how that goes, right? And we can come back next year, and hopefully it'll go really well, and we'll do another, right? I was going to say a lot, but honestly, most of it's been said. Just so very quickly, locally grown food is the most secure, least carbon-intensive food you can grow. I think Roseanne's right. Food supply is going to become increasingly stressed as a result of climate change, and I think we're all going to look back and be really, really glad that we incentivized this local food production of really, really healthy food. I was going to quote from our Ron's food security plan and our comp plan, but I'm not going to do that because time is short. But I'd really like tonight to allocate to those funds so we can get moving with this.
And I agree. I'll keep it short. So, Mike, do you support this?
I can, but can we allocate it with an understanding that from Common Roots that we will try to basically come back with a sort of clear notion of how do we get to sustainability, how the needs of the school and the food can be met, and it's do you see this as just a growing because you always can do more, or can we come up with a plan that says for the next 5 to 10 years this is what we'll be targeting and this will create that sustainability? For me, I think that would give me a much level of comfort that we're not just spending into something that will just be an endless effort, but yes, we are moving towards a plateau that will create a positive return for people in our community and a way out of where they are at this time, because I think it's not about a permanent condition.
Great, thanks. Elizabeth, you okay?
Yeah, I would second Mike's effort to put this on a future agenda and also account for sort of the percentage of the current crops and future production that are supporting South Burlington families.
Okay, so after the installation, right, and whatever the yields are next year, we would get a report of where the food went, right? Would that be appropriate? Yeah, okay. Do we need to have a motion on this?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So
You
who would
need
like
a
to make
motion, you need a funding
So
source, you need specifics.
I move that we allocate $52,000 to Common Roots for the purchase of a hoop house as described, and that the funding source from that is the ARPA reserve funds that we've set aside in the capital improvement plan.
Can I ask a question about that? So do you mean the created fund balance you're creating in the future, or do you mean actually with ARPA dollars?
The created fund balance in the future. And that Common Roots present to us at some appropriate time, say next summer, next fall, where all the great food went.
Not just went, but the vision of how to make to a sustainable, because it's not just about, I thought our understanding is it's about helping them achieve a sustainable footprint. Not
A
just
sustainability plan.
A sustainability plan, there we go.
I will second that with all the amendments.
So we have a motion and a second. I'm not going to allow any further discussion unless the city manager has some.
I just do want to note, you can do this, you can always do one-time funds. You are skipping a lot of our procurement policy. So for us to spend over $50,000, for staff to spend that, we have to bid it, provide to the market. You don't have to follow that policy, you can do different things. I just want to call out that you have not solicited from the community, other community partners for funding. You're totally within your rights. I just want to note it.
And I'll just add to it that we are funding a nonprofit organization rather than putting out a bid for a greenhouse.
What about the other nonprofits?
What's that?
Nonprofits could
Could do the same, absolutely.
So can I just repeat back what I think your motion is?
Yeah.
52,000 for one hoop house to Common Roots with your created ARPA fund balance. And did I miss a comment about sustainability plan, a friendly amendment?
Commitment to provide a sustainability plan.
With a report about the report with the yields and where they were delivered to by the fall.
The key is, I think, at least 2% sustainability plan. Not just how it was used, but how is it getting us to a
And
system.
you can't make it too amorphous, right? Because it's going to.
I would encourage that they come back to us in the future with a more defined sustainability plan for their future viability.
Or just the farm part?
For Common Roots.
For the whole Common Roots, okay.
Yes.
I think we might need to change the part about the fall just because of when we'd be able to potentially construct this. The spring is unlikely just because of all the mud, so it could very well be created in the fall of 2025, and then we have yield, recorded from in 2026.
Ready for the vote?
Quick question to Jesse. So Jesse, is there any concern that we are creating a liability for the city with the motion we just made?
Nope.
Okay. Thanks.
Sorry, I have to ask. We're reimbursing upon. Are we reimbursing, or are we just cutting a check? I mean, these are there's some technicalities here that typically we would work out before.
Can we allocate based on you working out those details?
The short answer to that to me is yes. I just want to make sure that there would be some work either beside with myself or the city attorney's office to get an agreement and have this all bundled up versus cutting a check over and not knowing when the structure is going to go up or any of those things.
Yeah, that makes
There's
sense.
a lot of details here that we would typically know before we would issue a check for $52,000.
Yeah, I would say we're
That makes sense.
authorizing staff to execute this with,
All the proper due diligence.
yeah,
With appropriate process.
yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So probably the cleanest thing to do then is to bring you back some kind of agreement to authorize. Okay.
Yes.
Good point.
For a second vote?
You just go on consent.
Yeah.
Okay, consent, right, okay. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, it's unanimous. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you
You
for
got a
having
group
us.
out, you got a room all. Someday.
Keep up
Thank you
the
very
good
much.
work, guys.
If they. Going to item number 11, receive a request from the Sextons and discuss next steps down at Kinville. But I also see some other Sextons with you. They have that look, the Sextons look.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you. Donna Kinville, Chair of the Sextons. We have Peter Taylor and Chuck Rainville, other Sextons for the city. On November 5th, I sent you a letter regarding a couple of our concerns. It was decided at our October meeting that this is something we need to bring before the City Council, which is also the Cemetery Commission. Biggest thing is when you did your policies that you can be taking up in the next year, you put some of our Sextons roles on the parking lot. And you put a moratorium on cemetery burials. So I think it was a misquote or misspoke. So we're looking for you guys to change that wording and to change it to selling burial lots instead of burial. So we're hoping that you might do that so that if unfortunately someone does pass in the city and they have a lot there, that we wouldn't have a holdup to that burial. That's one request.
I'll make that motion to clarify.
I'll second
intended.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 And
So that takes care of that.
What was that?
That takes care of that.
That's, so there were two other things we kind of wanted to bring forth. Like I said, we've been working really hard. And one of the things we're kind of missing, when I was the city clerk, I took over a lot of this. I was able to make the meetings and schedule the Zooms and get access to all the things I need to do. So that when I retired, there is no city liaison or staff person that we have. And I sent Jesse an email this week. I have my personal computer, so when I go to the meetings, I bring my personal computer to the Zoom meeting. I don't have Word, I don't have Excel, and now my Word is telling me it ain't let me do anything. I can't save, I've reached my limit. So unless I want to go out and personally buy the program, I'm limited in what I can do. So it would be nice if we could get a city employee to kind of be there. I'm not necessarily saying they have to attend the meetings, but just someone that could be our support person. We need some work updating the web when the new website becomes available and puts more information out there and these things that we haven't thought about in the past. But not having the access to do it myself, I have to work through somebody, and that would greatly help us to do that. Is my vision that the work we're doing as a cemetery, well, on behalf of the Cemetery Commission, honestly, is something that is probably a couple of years worth of work. But then once we get all of our projects done that we want to do, really we can kind of go back to being sextons and just worry about going and, doing our yearly cleanups and cleaning the gravesides and picking those up that fell over. On more of the care of the maintenance. It's just that the cemeteries in the city have been neglected for so long that we're putting a lot of effort into this. And so once we can knock some things off, we're not going to keep coming back to you. We just want them gone, done, and taken care of. And so one of the things we thought would maybe help with that is if we would have a council liaison to attend our meetings so that you have a better understanding of where we're going and what we're doing. And because I think we are doing great things and it's being recognized, and we got a $50,000 donation to beautify Eldridge. So I think our work is being noticed, and it is relevant to the city and to our residents, those who are with us and those who are no to time to be able to go forth and finish our work.
Do we have staff capacity to make a liaison available to the Sextons?
At 10 o'clock at night, I'm going to say we have negative staff capacity for lots of things right now. You can ask to take this off the bike rack, and I will likely staff it myself, and that means I will not do other things. That is your choice how you want to allocate my time.
Thank you for
I'm
the answer.
happy to be the council liaison. I have capacity.
I was going to offer that also.
I mean,
I don't mind continuing kind of being that liaison. I just don't have the tools to do it and the ability to get to places. So if for some reason, say, staff is really just not able to do that, I just need the ability to get to some things.
And I just want to be really fair to Andrea. Andrea has been
She
doing
has.
the vast majority of this for Donna, and Donna's asking for something above that.
That's in the city clerk's office? No, Andrea.
Andrea's my,
your
or
assistant.
the city
Yeah.
manager suite's executive assistant.
So if that's already being done, is there a tremendous amount adding to that, or is that?
But I think what's being asked for is a staff liaison like we have to other committees. So somebody who attends the meeting, does all the administrative work, runs the capital projects that Donna's talking about. It is moving this off the bike rack and making it a priority project for the city.
Let me ask you this. We had put it on the bike rack for 20. Does that mean that in that time context, it would be possible to, you see the staff capacity developing in 2026? I mean, what is the benefit of putting on the bike rack? Or will we be faced with the same challenge and trade-offs in 2026?
Yeah, you were asked to weigh different priorities against each other, and this was not something that...
No, but if we wait to 2026, it will be the same challenge of the same
Depends
staff.
on what other things you have, what other priorities.
It might even be worse.
It could be worse.
Unless we see a consolidation of committees that we were talking at some point. Did we have a benefit from the consolidation of the committee of the affordable housing and the...
Just happened.
It just happened, but I mean, were there two staff persons? But I guess one committee didn't meet very often.
The housing trust did not meet
didn't
that
meet.
frequently.
Once every other year. Seriously. Okay.
It's 10 o'clock and I'm a broken record, but I'll say it again. We started in 2018 when the council appointed 3 sextons to begin to restore the cemeteries. Donna was the clerk, so she was the city employee that funneled everything through her office. In the last year, we've become bike racked, which caught us all off guard. And I don't know how that happened. I guess we didn't worry about it, so we didn't make any effort to come before you. When we come at the end of a long presentation and you dole out all your priorities, well, we got bike racked. So, and next year is going to be worse for you. We've got $50,000 to spend correctly. We will be meeting and developing projects. I'm going to ask Jesse bluntly, can we spend that money under the status that we're in right now?
You would, as we talked about before, you would need to, or Dawn and I, somebody and I talked about this, we would need a project plan with a funding plan that was approved by the council to be able to draw down those funds through the city's procurement process.
So
it's your money. It's sitting in a bank account for you.
Okay. So it's important that we have a liaison to work with us while we're going through this. I mean, this is not an inconsequential amount of money. You just gave $50,000 away like that, and you didn't even say, let's wait till next month and think it over. We're going to think this over very carefully because it's a very important amount of money and fairly sizable, but it'll go quickly for what we have to do. And I've been really disappointed in being put on the bike rack with this issue and caught off guard by it. And I'm really upset by it. So that's
Peter,
my
can
2
I
cents.
just clarify, the Sextons as a committee, as a group, the work you're doing is, in my mind, not the bike rack, what we put on the bike rack, I thought, was this question of the administration and inventory of cemetery plots, like who takes the money, who assigns the plots, you know, who's doing the inventory, like that whole question, which I had understood was quite complicated, and you know, multiple groups need to get involved. That piece, now, admittedly, that's a big part of what a cemetery does, but that's the piece that was put on hold for a year, not everything else that the Sextons do. Do I have that wrong? I have that right. Okay,
that's correct. And I will also ask.
Well, that may be a different thing, but we haven't put the Sextons on the bike rack, right? It's just this question about the administration of selling new plots.
I have a follow-up to Andrew's question, which is, if there were a city council liaison to the Sextons, and that provided you some additional support to put together your proposal for spending the $50,000, would that be a balanced solution to give some more support to the committee and enable them to bring forth
a compromise without a staff person dedicated, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that seem like that would be workable to you, Jesse?
I would love to give that a try.
Okay. So
or two council liaisons.
We can do it, yes. There's no reason not to have two of us to provide. I don't think your microphone's on.
Non-invasives.
It went off. Sorry. Our small trees or plants in Eldridge Cemetery will have to get approval from the airport because of height and all of that.
Oh, yeah.
But also,
And Public Works because it's city infrastructure.
and also Jesse will want to know, or Public Works will want to know, because will it require regular maintenance or ongoing maintenance? Hopefully not regular maintenance, but some type of maintenance. So when we do those things, that's why it's important to have involvement up front as we develop what we're going to put in that cemetery with this wonderful donation we have.
So Peter, if you get two city council liaisons to support your committee moving forward, is that an acceptable step forward for you at this point?
Sure.
So
three.
Nope.
You can't do that. So do we want to make a motion to that effect? And
who are those two counselors you're talking about?
well, we both, Drew and I both raised our hands.
Oh, okay. So I'll make a motion that that Laurie and Andrew become liaisons to the Sextons Committee for the purpose of facilitating their work and become the go-between between the committee and the city as needed.
I'll second that.
And I just want to point out that we did reach out to the Department of Public Works, and Adam Cat actually, I'll never say his last name right, came to our last meeting. It was very helpful, and I believe Tom DiPietro is going to be at our next meeting to kind of help us work through this, make sure we do anything that's going to be against what the city really would like to have there, and go against any policies or that they might have.
Did you second it?
I did.
Okay. So, and my recommendation is that that beautification could include maybe the installation of a columbarium.
Yes.
That's
Right.
one of
That's one of our,
Okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
So we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. Boom.
well, except that I don't have access to like the word and all those things I need to help build the permits and to.
They do. They do.
We have that.
You do. So,
Yes.
I'll bring my laptop.
okay.
I'll bring my laptop.
Okay.
Those
I'll get you
meetings
up
are
when I
live.
want the agenda needs to be created. Okay.
You weren't expecting success, were you?
Well, no, I just don't.
A lot of
No,
compromise
it's just
going
that everything's on my personal laptop and I'm running up and so would not be able to save things. So I'm kind of like, things are here and there and that. And I'm just getting a little bit.
We can provide technical
Lopsided.
support.
Council liaisons, I'd also recommend that we get things off of personal accounts and onto city records.
Yeah.
And I actually did talk to Andy about that. And once the city website gets, and I haven't heard that it's been up and ready, we're going to start working on bringing what I have on my laptop, bringing it into the
So that's a
city's
different
portal.
thing. How the website and the records of the cemetery, I think, are two different things.
Okay, I'll work with Andy then on that.
No, these guys. You're working with these guys.
But, no, but okay.
All right.
Let's discuss that. I know we have access to the city council site with the folders. Is that the appropriate place for this? But let's talk about that after.
That's okay.
Good. Thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Item number 12, which is receive information on proposing state legislation on data sharing between the state and municipalities around local option tax receipts. I would ask for a motion for the last bullet item for staff to work with data entities such as CCRPC to craft a data sharing pilot with aggregate data provided to communities.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Is that amenable?
Sure.
Okay. All those in, wait, Elizabeth?
Aye.
Elizabeth?
Wasn't the recommendation that we explore these options in partnership with Vermont Department of Taxes?
With tax, TAX in capitals. Do you want to comment
It's
on that?
called on the website, on the state. That's what the state calls it.
Oh, I
It's
didn't
like
know that.
BDH.
I didn't know that.
Tax.
It wasn't just the last bullet point, was it?
Sorry.
Stay with us.
Your recommendation was to explore in partnership with tax and other municipal and public sector partners. I know what, if we go too wide, it might,
Slow it down.
yeah, and
Isn't it better to start just with the tax and to see what is possible without drawing in too many other partners as a starting point? I mean, that's how I interpret it, is that sort of linear. We'd start with tax, see if it's possible. If not, build consensus to go further. Or am I misreading that?
Nope, that is definitely an option. I think the reason I wrote it this way specifically with the other municipal partners is that there are only a handful of us that have a certain level of local options tax for whom this would be hugely beneficial. So instead of us going it alone, if we bring in like 2 or 3 other managers who might have a very similar interest as ours, we might have more luck.
But we're not.
Yeah.
But are you? And that's great. I think more voices are good. But you would make the judgment at what point that you would just go forward. It wouldn't be trying to get consensus with a group that can go around and around.
It's just increasing the lobby force.
should I rescind my motion and change it? Because I chose the last bullet, but do you want to take the bullet above it, which is stack with?
I'm happy with the last bullet. I'd leave it in that in Jesse's discretion and Steve's discretion.
Okay.
That's the best way
Yeah.
forward.
So, yeah, I'll amend it with, friendly amendment with.
I'm confused then, because the last bullet is not the
Not the last bullet.
recommendation.
It says my recommendation, right? Isn't that?
Oh,
That's what you
no,
added?
no, that's not a bullet item.
It's not
At
a
the very
bullet.
bottom, it says that her recommendation is to explore these options in partnership with other, with tax and other municipal.
Tax and
public-
municipals.
That was your motion?
Do you,
That's
do
what
you
your
want
motion-
to, you
that
want
was
to
your
use that as,
motion.
okay, so I rescind my original motion, and I now adjust it to be that we ask that Jesse explore these options in partnership with the Vermont Department of Taxes and other municipal and public sector partners.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Going to item 13, which is review the significant agenda topics below for the council's regular meeting on December 2nd, which would be the FY26 budget presentation and the city manager's proposed budget. Yay! And receive and consider approving FY25 work plans from the following
No,
committees.
that's got, per Lori earlier, that got now moved to
To
the second meeting in December the 16th.
December 16th. Okay, so B goes to the 16th. And then C, Champlain Housing Trust request to allocate ARPA funding previously approved for weatherization of Dorset Commons.
So just a sentence on this. When a couple of years ago, when the council awarded the $1 million for affordable housing development, one bucket of that money was given to CHT to build new homes at Dorset Common. They would like to walk that back, and instead they have a big weatherization effort of Dorset Commons that they would like you to consider reallocating 1-for-1. So that's going to be the request. I think I'm meeting with them at 11 tomorrow morning.
When you have that meeting with them, just make sure that they have explored fully all the other money that's out there for weatherization. Because I've been under the impression that for affordable housing, CVOEO and VGS will basically do that for free.
Okay.
And will we have an opportunity to see what their plan is before that is reallocated?
My hope is that you at a minimum would be able to see it as part of the packet for the second. Is that what you mean? Yeah.
This might be a good pilot with VGS.
Not a bad idea.
Who's told me they're willing to do it for free.
That might well go further.
Or, let's do it,
All right, any other discussion on item 13? No. So now 14, I need a motion to go into Liquor Control Commission.
So, second.
We've motioned second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are now convened as Liquor Commission. I need a motion to approve applications for the Delta Hotels by Marriott First Class Hotel License, Delta Hotels by Marriott Burlington Third Class Hotel License, Delta Hotels by Marriott Burlington Outside Consumption Permit.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We now need a motion to come out of Liquor Control.
So moved.
Second.
And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Now we're on to other business. We all saw the email from the Underwoods, right? And I can't remember where did you not see? Oh, so I don't have the woman's name in front of me. I don't have the email right in front of me, but they're lamenting the fact that we didn't take any action yet on, the Underwood family about the
children.
about going to subname Overlook Park, Overlook Park at Underwood. And we haven't taken any action yet on that. And so they were bemoaning the fact that it's been taking a long time. So,
Well, just be clear, she thought, and
Turn on your microphone.
renaming of Overlook is now deferred until we come up with a naming policy, which I had not understood that that's what we all agreed. I thought the naming policy was for future,
Right.
naming, but we had kind of already, we had concluded that we would rename.
yeah, we'd agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Okay. That was no. That is not what we have communicated to her. So if you would like to revisit that, we certainly can. We had told her that we were pausing it, but I haven't seen whatever she communicated. So
That is what she communicated. So that is not what I'd understood the council had agreed on. And if we need to confirm that, I would move that we reconfirm that.
I would reconfirm that.
But is renaming Overlook, or is it doing a hyphen name for Hopper?
We, at the meeting, I don't remember what it was it last spring, or we said we would rename Overlook?
Overlook at Underwood.
Overlook, I forgot what the exact
I
name
thought it was
but
Underwood
include
Park at
the
Overlook.
Underwood name, but not,
We will keep the Overlook aspect in the name.
I don't remember what the exact name was, but it was incorporating the Underwood name into the name of that park.
Yeah, I know I was not involved or on council during any of
So it
those
was maybe it was
conversations.
February or
Yeah, this
January.
doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't.
Yeah, okay.
I was on council. when
Yeah, we
that
were.
happened.
She came and spoke.
She came and spoke, and
Right.
okay.
Anyway.
So if three of you would like this on the agenda, I'm happy to put it on the agenda and revisit where we are. How about that?
Please.
How about that?
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good.
That's good. Okay.
Um,
Any other business?
Yes.
Unfortunately.
Can somebody send me that email
Yes.
though? Thank you.
We all
I'll-
we all received the letter that both the Lake Sham or the South Burlington Land Trust and that NEAT submitted to Vermont Housing and Conservation Board regarding the 6-acre clause that they put into their resolution, and that 6-acre clause probably would in some ways be a deal killer because it takes away a lot of the reason that we would be engaged in conservation. I think that I would like to direct staff to follow or to write a follow-up letter to the Conservation Board mirroring what was said by NEAT and the Land Trust.
So just to maybe follow up on that. I think from our perspective, and I agree with that, but from our perspective, if the 6 acres is not included, we can't use open space funds. If the 6 acres could potentially be developed, we can't use open space funds. If we can't use open space funds, then I think that the deal just can't happen. And honestly, I'd like us as a council to communicate that really clearly to VHCB, that I think their condition really is a deal killer, because it removes our ability to tap the funding source that we anticipated.
So I will, if you guys want to do this, I think we need to warn this on an agenda and take action on it. I don't think doing this under other business is a good idea, which means
But their meeting is on the 3rd, isn't it?
13th.
Or 13th. Okay,
Yeah.
so we could do it on the 2nd.
Yeah, I will share with you, I think it will be a deal killer for VHB funding if they take out that 6 acres. That's what I was reading between the lines with VHCB. So
it may be right, but it's then, yeah.
So put it on for December 2nd?
Yeah.
Because not reading between the lines, I heard from Neat that keeping it in would be a deal killer.
Well, it is a deal killer because we can't use open space funds.
But you have lots of other funding sources. You just spent $52,000.
We're not in the business of buying developable property.
Right.
I mean,
it's another whole ball of wax.
That's just not.
It is developable property.
It's
Either way,
consumable
though.
property.
And developable property.
So on one hand, and I don't want to get into this because it's late and we'll have an item on December 2nd. So anyway, I agree.
Last thing, Tim, sorry, just when I first joined the council, there used to be an agenda item to talk about climate change, and seeing some of the feedback that we got on the budget survey indicates to me that it would be a good idea to start that up again, because I think that maybe we have a leadership role to play in that we have been playing as effectively as we could.
So is a distinct agenda item to talk about climate change issues?
Yeah.
Or do you want
wasn't that something that was?
We did that first. I don't know for how long, but it seemed like it was maybe a year.
And I'm not saying it needs to be on every agenda. Maybe it could be a monthly item, but I just feel like we're not communicating to the public as effectively as we can why our time and money spent in this area is really, really important. And having that on the agenda would help us do that.
I agree with that. And
I feel like, and without going through the survey results, we just sort of put them in the consent agenda tonight. Based on, I mean, to me, there should, if that's the case, there should be a discussion of the survey results and determine where there may be gaps that we should schedule a routine agenda item on any number of topics that residents brought up in the survey.
I would also say it's not, you're looking at what you think is not being said. I'm also looking at it is what I'm hearing is being said that doesn't feel like it's being addressed. So, I would agree that, if we're going to add agenda items, we should also extrapolate from that budget. What are some of the items that some of the community who have chosen to participate in? I think we all have to acknowledge 136 is a small sampling, are suggesting that they feel are shortcomings in what we're doing.
I would also caution you've had a difficult time getting out of here before 10 or 10:30 with our current agenda items. So we may have some challenges of capacity.
When we had the item on, it didn't necessarily take that long, but certain counselors had learned something since the previous meeting and would just make it like an announcement. We could also tuck it into announcement as well, but maybe that's not as direct as you would like.
I would personally like it to be an agenda item. If there are other things, Mike, that you want to add, feel free. But I think it's such a difficult topic for people to wrap their heads around, given we are so small and our share is so small, that leadership is really important in this area.
why don't we get through the budget season and then like revisit this? I think that discussions are going to be a lot tougher than I think any of us are acknowledging. And that's why I also said even making the decision on what we just did on Common Roots would have been ideally to wait, because I think it is going to be really, really tough. We're going to find out, I guess, on Wednesday what the school budget situation is going to be, which I don't think is going to be very promising. So I would suggest before what Steve is suggesting is let's just focus on getting through this important budget season. We'll also have fully staffed when we come out of the budget season. You'll have a climate person, you'll have your data analyst person, and we can work all of those things into discussions we ought to have.
When might we have a decision on the hiring of the climate action?
January.
So, I hope to have an offer out and accepted the first week in December, accepted by the second to start in the new year.
In the new year.
Yeah.
Year. So that would be a big item, right? Is the introduction of that new hire, right? And a statement and some sharing.
Started.
Yeah.
Then when the new hire comes on board, I think it should be a regular.
Yeah.
Periodic.
No, and then maybe that's one of their responsibilities is to come talk to us, once.
But I think
so.
Show leaders as the municipal, we need to show leadership.
Yeah.
But yeah, sure.
Yeah. But okay, after.
Well, maybe this is
You're turning red, Jesse.
Yeah. Well, you have 200 staff who work on core municipal government who don't come before you at every meeting. It feels to me like I don't disagree that climate's really important, but how are you balancing your precious policy time to hear from folks? That was my reaction of we're gonna have this one brand new employee, and when was the last time you heard from Chief Burke, for example? I don't mean to pick on him.
Right.
This is not anything coming from him. This is me just talking.
We'll
but
just use a sad news. I still don't have 10 people.
still don't have 10 people. But I definitely will bring the climate manager to you to be introduced. So I think kicking off with that is a great step.
Kind of a kickoff. Let's kick it off. Yeah. Any other business? Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
So what are we thinking of having that meeting with the state legislators?
I'm having it with Tim in.
Oh, you guys are having it with Tim.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. We have one more thing. We don't have to, it doesn't have to be official. on the
Sure.
minutes, but I'm having a conflict with the energy committee. Lori knows this.
With which committee?
The energy. Okay. Lori got me involved, thank you, Lori, with a chorus that meets when the energy committee meets. And
Oh no.
yes.
Kind of loud.
And so it's just been really hard.
Where do they meet? Where do you meet?
No, it's a time. It's a time.
Oh.
Okay, are you guys actually done your meeting?
Well, I wanted to ask my fellow councilors if anyone would be willing to swap.
Swap what?
So, well, there are 3 other
Swap liaisons?
committees that I've identified. Library meets 5:30 Tuesday. I could do.
Library doesn't have a liaison. Library doesn't have a liaison.
Dr. Ted 5:30 Wednesday. Public Art 5:30 Tuesday. If anyone would be willing to switch with me, I would do that because I've not been
able to go.
I'm not fulfilling what I think my obligations are to the energy committee.
Oh.
And it's going to continue next semester.
It's going to continue next semester.
Because you're a singer.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, I see. Okay. We get it now.
I'm not for Andrew, but I can't do it either.
So would it be? This is something. What's the day?
It's Wednesday.
I think you can set it around and we would just take a vote at a public meeting of liaisons.
I will send an email to.
I think we are adjourning at 10:37. Thank you, Travis.
And I love the energy committee, but it's just not working.
10:37.
Please don't leave.
We got to sign stuff. Ah. My pen.
I have to go to the bathroom before I leave here.
Do you really? This is the resolution.
Thank you. Hey guys, while you're all sitting here, there is a case in the